Chapter 784. Good. That's settled. Nongzhu waved her hand and said, with Lu Yanqing's medical skills, there should be no problem. As for finding hundreds of people to draw their blood, it's a piece of cake. In Baiwan Kingdom, as long as Wen Lanfeng asks, not to mention 200 people, even 20,000 people can be easily gathered. Lu Yanqing, why don't you go to Baiwan Kingdom with Wen Lanfeng? It's also convenient. Lu Yanqing nodded slightly. Her eyes swept over the once lush and beautiful Lingfang Valley, which had become a barren land, and a trace of sadness and gloom flashed through her eyes. Seeing that the matter had been resolved, Yu Qianzhou looked at the enchantress and Yanyu, and then looked at Immortal crocodile standing alone on the mountain not far away. He said with relief, all right. Everyone disband and go about their own business. We're leaving too. He was about to greet Immortal crocodile and return to the demon domain with the enchantress and Yanyu. Unexpectedly, when Lanfeng said, wait. Yu Qianzhou, you still haven't replied to what I just asked of you? Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He was speechless to meet such an unreasonable person. He was about to lose his life, but he still asked for a song. He was not only a love-struck fool but also an idiot. Nongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, when Lanfeng, heal your injury first. It's not like we won't meet again in the future. Why are you in such a hurry now? When Lanfeng immediately transmitted his voice to Nongzhu, it's not that I'm unreasonable, but it's really rare to encounter such an opportunity. This guy has always been elusive. Who knows when we will find him again after we break up this time. What's more, I know that Lu Yanqing really likes his songs. If I don't take advantage of my injury now, it will be really inconvenient for me to ask for his help in the future. You should know that his current identity and cultivation are not what they used to be. You beat the drum, just treat it as helping Lu Yanqing realize this wish. Besides, you are also a musician. Don't you want to see for yourself whether this guy is really as talented as the legend says? He secretly transmitted his voice to Nongzhu, pretending to be in deep thought. Then he said slowly, Nongzhu, I know my own injury. Although Lu Yanqing's medical skills are extraordinary, anything can happen. What if I have an accident this time? Nongzhu stared at Wen Lanfeng, dumbfounded, and then looked at Yu Qianzhou with a strange expression. Wen Lanfeng was right. He also wanted to see if this guy was really as talented as the rumors said in the cultivation world. But no matter how he looked at it, this guy looked like a hooligan. How could he be talented? Lu Yanqing did not know what Wen Lanfeng was thinking and comforted him. Don't worry. I'm sure I can cure you. Yu Qianzhou, who was a little speechless, immediately nodded and cooperated. Yes. Yes. Senior Lu will definitely be able to cure you, don't think too much about it. Wen Lanfeng said with a wry smile, Yu Qianzhou, is it so difficult for you to compose a song? The weather is unpredictable. Something really happens today will be the last time we meet. Do you really have the heart to let me leave with regrets? Damn it. Someone even cursed himself to have an accident. Yu Qianzhou found it hard to refuse him and couldn't help but hesitate. Nongzhu immediately coughed and said, Yu Qianzhou, all the right and wrong are in the past, but you can't forget one thing. She did help you before. You can decide what to do. I won't say more. Yu Qianzhou suddenly felt something was wrong. He was watching Nongzhu's expression suspiciously. Suddenly, someone behind him poked him. Looking back, he found it was Yanyu. He could not help asking her what she wanted. Yanyu said seriously, Isn't Senior when asking for it for Senior Lu? If it's convenient for you, compose a song for Senior Lu. As he spoke, he turned to look at the Allure Beauty and continued, Let's not talk about this matter anymore. Senior Lu has always taken good care of us. The Allure Beauty immediately met Yu Qianzhou's gaze and nodded heavily. The reason why Yanyu tried so hard was that she wanted to see if her man was really talented. She was looking forward to it very much. The temptress was also looking forward to what new song Yu Qianzhou could compose. Damn it. Since when did I owe so many favors? Yu Qianzhou glanced at them and finally looked at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing a few more times, wondering which song he should choose that was more suitable for the two of them. What song should he choose? In contemplation, he paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. Sometimes he looked up to the sky and sometimes he bent down. The people around him suddenly became a little excited. Judging from Yu Qianzhou's behavior, he had undoubtedly agreed. Obviously, he was preparing a good song. The temptress and Yanyu secretly looked at each other, and a smile quietly appeared on their faces. However, Nongzhu was still deeply doubtful. Was this guy for real? Could he compose a classic song in such a short time with his rascally look? How could a so-called classic be called a classic if it was not thoroughly tempered? At this moment, Yu Qianzhou's eyes suddenly stopped on a hillside in the distance, which was covered with weeds. It was so far away that he stared at it carefully. Amidst the lush green short grass, there was a beautiful Yu beauty blooming alone. The bright red color contained a little black ink. It was very beautiful. It was the poppy flower that he was very familiar with in his previous life. It was swaying shyly in the wind. He could not help sighing inwardly. I used to plant it on a large scale in my previous life. Damn it! I was distracted. When he came back to his senses, he accidentally glanced at Lu Yanqing. He was stunned for a moment, and then he looked back at the flower and thought to himself. Got it. Now that he knew what to do, he began to act tough again. In his words, since he had already given his all, he had to perform well when it was time to do so. Otherwise he would have suffered a loss. He gazed at the Yu beauty with a faint smile on his face. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking abnormally tall and straight. He exuded a scholarly aura, and he really did have the demeanor of a scholar. Everyone present looked at each other in dismay. They all felt as if he had suddenly become a different person, and the feeling he gave off was like the difference between heaven and earth. Nongzhu squinted her eyes and laughed in her heart. Is this guy for real? Everyone's gazes followed Yu Qianzhou's gaze to the distant hillside. Because the surrounding area had been plowed by the battle, the green on the hillside was exceptionally eye-catching, especially the Yu beauty that was swaying shyly in the wind. Right at this moment, Yu Qianzhou flew over in a graceful manner and slowly descended on the hill. He stared silently at the flower for a while before he sat down cross-legged and casually took out a zither and placed it on his knees. Is it really starting? The enchantress and Yanyu immediately flew over, and Nongzhu also flew over with a smile. When Lanfeng called Lu Yanqing to fly together, Li Duxing could not help but run over to join in the fun. He had heard Yu Qianzhou's playing and singing in the ghost village, and it was really not enough. Immortal Lord Crocodile had a strange expression on his face as he moved closer to the group. However, he was still a distance away from them. Under everyone's gaze, Yu Qianzhou smiled elegantly at the fresh flower in front of him. It was a very graceful thing to do, but with his braids, it made people feel awkward no matter how they looked at it. Nongzhu said, "Boy, can you do it? If you can't, don't pretend here." Yu Qianzhou continued to maintain his poise, feeling disinclined to pay him any attention. Once he provoked him, the two of them would start bickering, and that would definitely ruin the atmosphere that had been built up with great difficulty. He looked up at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, "Since Senior Wen has spoken, I, Yu Qianzhou, will present a song called Woman Flower to you two seniors. Enjoy it carefully." Woman Flower? The few of them smacked their lips and looked at Lu Yanqing together. It was obvious that the name of the song was specially made for Lu Yanqing. There was a faint trace of envy in the eyes of Enchantress and Yanyu. When Lanfeng seemed to like the song very much. He happily looked at Lu Yanqing, who was silent, and then looked at Yu Qianzhou, his eyes full of expectation. Yu Qianzhou stretched out his hand and gently caressed the Yu beauty in front of him. When he retracted his hand, he had already played a gentle and beautiful tune on the strings of the zither. The melody was so unique that it instantly dispelled the doubts in everyone's hearts. It was as if in the blink of an eye, they were placed in a quiet and serene valley. Everyone's eyes involuntarily focused on the Yu beauty. Yu Qianzhou's fingers were nimble and light as he plucked the strings of the zither. When the melody entered a soft and quiet state, he had already begun to echo the heartstrings of the zither. He hoarsely sang, "I have a flower planted in my heart, budding and waiting to bloom. Day and night, I eagerly await the one who has the heart to enter my dream." The beginning of the song was heart-stirring. In the blink of an eye, everyone was surprised, but in the blink of an eye, they were comforted by the beautiful music. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianzhou in astonishment, her face full of disbelief. Lu Yanqing was the most moved. Her body trembled slightly, and the beginning of the song had already made her mood a little uncontrollable. Wasn't she singing her own heart? Yu Qianzhou stared at the Yu beauty affectionately and said, "Woman's flower swaying in the world of mortals. Woman's flower swaying gently in the wind. I only hope that there is a pair of gentle hands that can soothe the loneliness in my heart. I have a flower, The fragrance of the flowers fills the branches. Who will sincerely seek traces of the fragrance? Flowers don't bloom for long. What can be broken must be broken. Women are like flowers in a dream. Even if there was no flower in front of everyone at this time, there was already a flower in their minds, swaying gently in the wind, so lovely and touching. The sentence, who will sincerely seek traces of the fragrance, immediately made Lu Yanqing bite her lips, almost unable to help herself. When Lanfeng's mind kept echoing the sentence, flowers don't bloom for long, what can be broken must be broken, tasting a trace of impulse, no need to hesitate to cherish the taste. Yu Qianzhou smiled and shook his head slowly and continued to sing, I have a flower, growing in my heart, true love no one understands. Weeds have covered the hillside, the most heartache is to admire oneself. Woman's flower swaying in the world of mortals, woman's flower swaying gently in the wind. I only hope that there is a pair of gentle hands that can soothe the loneliness in my heart. Woman's flower swaying in the world of mortals. Woman's flower swaying gently in the wind. If you smell the strong fragrance of the flower, don't ask me for whom the flower is red. This section of faint singing immediately caused everyone's eyes to once again focus on Lu Yanqing. Everyone seemed to understand her in an instant. It turned out that this woman's heart was so weak and helpless, so beautiful that it made people feel heartache. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianzhou speechlessly. She couldn't imagine how this guy could understand women so well, especially Lu Yanqing so well. The sentence, if you smell the strong fragrance of the flower, don't ask me for whom the flower is red, made Nongzhu's thoughts fly, and she returned to those indulgent times. Yu Qianzhou's voice suddenly became high-pitched. After loving, one knows how heavy it is. After getting drunk, one knows how strong the wine is. Flowers bloom and wilt in the end. Fate does not stay, like the spring breeze comes and goes. Women are like flowers in a dream. Fate does not stay, like the spring breeze comes and goes. Women are like flowers in a dream. Women are like flowers in a dream. Chapter 785. The mountain breeze blew gently and the sound of the zither stopped faintly. Everyone stood there in a daze and they were captivated by the final note. They were dazed and they were unable to recover from it for a long time. Yu Qianzhou looked around and was very satisfied with the effect. His act of being a gentleman was not in vain. He put away the zither and bent down to pluck the shy beauty Yu. He sniffed it and walked to Wen Lanfeng with a smile, waving it in front of him. Wen Lanfeng came back to his senses and looked at Yu Qianzhou with eyes full of amazement. He bowed deeply and thanked him. I have long heard that Yu Qianzhou is talented, but I never believed it. Today I have seen it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. You are indeed worthy of your reputation. You flatter me. It's fine as long as it can satisfy Senior Wen. Yu Qianzhou stuffed the beauty Yu into his hand and patted it. He smiled and said, if you have smelled the fragrance of the flower, don't ask for whom the flower is red. You must know that women are like flowers, flowers are like dreams, there is no need to hesitate. I wish Senior Wen's lover a happy ending. Wen Lanfeng nodded excitedly and said, thank you. He then strode to Lu Yanqing and presented the flower in his trembling hands. He did not dare to look into Lu Yanqing's eyes. Only when his hands were empty did he dare to raise his head to look at her. Lu Yanqing held the beauty Yu in her fingers and sniffed it with a depressed expression. Who knew that she would gently walk to Yu Qianzhou and stare at Yu Qianzhou with her clear eyes and ask, who do you think can understand the loneliness in my heart? Why did she go to ask him? Everyone's eyes flickered with suspicion. Yu Qianzhou's face stiffened. He immediately shook his head and said, I really don't understand. He then pointed to Wen Lanfeng and said, Senior Wen is a man with a heart, he will definitely understand. Lu Yanqing's eyes flashed with a trace of undetectable desolation and said with a faint smile, I have always been very curious, what kind of world is Yu Qianzhou's world, can you tell me? The enchantress and Yen Yu looked at each other. Nongzhu's mouth was slightly open, and Wen Lanfeng's chest was rising and falling rapidly. Li Duxing closed his eyes slightly. Immortal Crocodile, who was not far away, looked at him with burning eyes. Yu Qianzhou paused and secretly glanced at Wen Lanfeng. Then he laughed and said, my world is wonderful and exciting. It's hard for ordinary people to adapt to it. Just like the flower in Senior Lu's hand, it was only suitable to grow in this secluded valley, waiting for a sincere person to pluck it. On the other hand, the mortal world outside would only tarnish it and make it lose its original fragrance. then it would no longer be it. Two different worlds could only exist side by side, but they could never intersect. Therefore there is no need for Senior Lu to explore my world. Lu Yanqing looked at the flower in her hand and said with a faint smile, "But it was you who plucked it just now." Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. Suddenly he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Senior Lu, I'm a crude man. I'm more interested in the topic of having sex with women. Flowery topics really don't suit me. You should find someone who understands." Then he said to the enchantress Yan Yu, Immortal Crocodile, and Nongzhu, "The matter here is over and we should go." Then he cupped his hands and said to the others, "Goodbye." After that he took the lead and flew away. The people he called immediately followed him, and even Nongzhu did not say a word. The sky was high and the clouds were thin, and the earth was boundless with mountains. There was still a slight breeze blowing through the mountains. On the hillside, there were 3 people standing quietly amidst the lush green weeds. Lu Yanqing, who now had short hair, stared blankly at the horizon where Yu Qianqiu and the others had disappeared. She softly and tactfully murmured, "Fate does not stop. Like the spring breeze that comes and goes. Women are like flowers in a dream. Women are like flowers in a dream." In the sky, the group of people flew quickly in the direction of the South Sea purple bamboo forest. Immortal Crocodile, who had the highest cultivation, was following behind, and Yu Qianqiu was flying slowly in front, listlessly. Nongzhu flashed to his side, coughed and said, "Well, Yu Qianqiu." Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned around and interrupted, "I know what you want to say, but I don't want to talk to you now, and don't ask me anything." Nongzhu ignored him and sneered, "I know what you think I want to say to you, but it is not what you think. I just want to praise your good singing. You have deceived many women with your singing, haven't you?" "Faster, thief. I lied to you." Yu Qianqiu was so angry that he turned around and flew backward. He pointed at them and said angrily, "I said I wasn't going to sing, but you guys just had to instigate me to sing. Now look at you, singing caused trouble, didn't you?" Nongzhu sneered, "The most beautiful woman in the world. You must be proud of yourself, aren't you? I don't have anything in common with you, so don't talk to me." Yu Qianqiu warned and turned back to fly. The Allure Beauty and Yan Yu looked at each other in dismay. The former gave the latter a meaningful glance, and Yan Yu tacitly understood and flew to Yu Qianqiu's side. She said in astonishment, "The song just now was very nice. What happened when he sang? Why didn't I recognize it?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and tilted his head with a suspicious look. Yan Yu ignored him, hugged his arm and said coquettishly, "When are you going to give me a song? Is that okay?" Yu Qianqiu's spirit was immediately roused when he touched Yan Yu's ample bosom with his elbow. His gloomy face instantly brightened up and all his worries were thrown out of the window. He winked at her bosom and said, "Do you really want it?" Yan Yu nodded solemnly. Yu Qianqiu immediately smiled like a fox that had stolen a chicken and promised, "Oh, sure. Find a place where there is no one and I will sing 18 touches for you." "Really?" Yan Yu said with surprise. Yu Qianqiu moved his elbow and said with a smile, "Of course." Yan Yu saw that he was unhappy, so she came to cheer him up. She didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would really promise to give her a song, so she was really overjoyed. She didn't expect that his words were full of dirty meaning, and she hugged him more tightly in joy. Yu Qianqiu's face was full of smile. Happiness is always more important than trouble. The night in the South Sea purple bamboo forest was especially charming. Tonight the purple bamboo forest was filled with the laughter of women. As the saying goes, 3 women make a play, and it is lively when they are together. Purple Dress was very happy to have a companion, and she fully displayed the spirit of a host and welcomed them warmly. The 3 women chattered almost endlessly and all the men stood aside. There should have been 4 women, but unfortunately, Furong had taken the limit-breaking pill and was still in a stiff stage. This also made Yu Qianqiu a little nervous, worried that Furong wouldn't be able to accept Yan Yu's appearance when she woke up. He asked Yan Yu in return and she seemed very generous, showing that she didn't care how many women he had, but was afraid that others would dislike her because of her poor background. It could be seen that she was a little worried that Furong wouldn't accept her. Yu Qianqiu could only comfort her out of kindness. After all, now that things had come to this, he had to slowly try to make them get along, and they couldn't not see each other for the rest of their lives, right? It was the first time that Yu Qianqiu saw the night view of the purple bamboo forest. At night, the forest was filled with misty spiritual qi, which could be said to be quite dense, and all of it was emitted by the purple bamboo. This made Yu Qianzhou feel a little strange. Plants could actually emit spiritual qi, and when he asked Nongzhu, he also didn't know the answer. However, the most strange thing was that the joints of the branches of the purple bamboo were actually glowing with a faint purple light, which couldn't be seen in the daytime. Under the night sky, looking at the bamboo forest, there were dots of soft purple light everywhere, and when a gust of night wind blew, the purple light swayed and it was very beautiful. Yu Qianzhou made a net bed and found a place where the bamboo was sparser and pulled it up, lying on it, biting the bamboo leaves and looking at the stars. The sky was full of stars, and with the purple light swaying around him, a gust of wind blew, and Yu Qianzhou swayed on the net bed, feeling like he was in a dream. This place was so beautiful that it was a little unreal, and he was really envious of Nongzhu for finding such a good place to live. If only I could live like this leisurely for the rest of my life. He couldn't help but let out a sigh with his arm behind his head. What are you sighing about? Immortal crocodile, who didn't mix with others, suddenly appeared beside him. Yu Qianzhou tilted his head and smiled at him. Seeing that he was stroking the bamboo next to him, he couldn't help but sit up and ask curiously, "Old monster, is there such bamboo in the celestial world?" Immortal crocodile touched the bamboo joint that was emitting a soft purple light, looked around and slowly shook his head. "I've never seen or heard of such a magical bamboo. Not only does it emit light, but it can also emit spiritual qi, which is really incredible. I didn't expect such a good thing to exist in the world." "Even you haven't heard of it?" Yu Qianzhou looked around and his expression became serious. It should be known that Immortal Crocodile's experience was among the best in the celestial world, and he himself regarded him as a know-it-all. Who would have thought that even he didn't know about it? This was a bit unusual. Could it be a natural treasure? "When are you going to leave?" Immortal Crocodile suddenly asked. Yu Qianzhou came back to his senses, looked at the chatting women and sighed. "Some people are destined to be happy and some people are destined to pay. Let's do it now." With that said, he jumped off the net bed and the two walked into the depths of the bamboo forest. In the Inn of Lust City, Yu Qianzhou left Immortal Crocodile's room and went straight to the door of Boli's room. He pushed the door and found that it was indeed not locked. These natives were used to staying in the tribe and had no habit of locking their doors. He closed the door, walked to the bedside and kicked Boli, who was sleeping soundly, awake. When Boli saw him, he immediately asked where he had been, as he hadn't seen him for the past few days. Yu Qianzhou smiled slightly. He realized that this fellow seemed to have gained a lot of weight after not seeing him for a few days. It seemed like he was living a good life. He didn't say much and got Boli to find the other tribesmen. After everyone arrived, he asked them in detail about their experiences over the past few days, and there was nothing unusual. He sent them to Utopia and let them meet their tribesmen. He sat by Boli's bed and fell silent for a while. His gaze gradually deepened and he instantly made a decision. If Huang Tian still hadn't found any news about the purple flames, he wasn't prepared to wait any longer. He didn't have the patience to wait any longer. Chapter 786. In the underground palace under the city Lord Manor's garden, Yu Qianzhou directly burrowed into the ground. After looking around, his eyes landed on the dirt ball on the table in the center. Every time Huang Tian left this place, he would gather a dirt ball here in case Yu Qianzhou came to find him. Yu Qianzhou walked straight to the table and broke the dirt ball. He sat on the chair and waited quietly. Not long after, Huang Tian came through the wall with a bad expression. As he walked over, he asked, "Where have you been these days? I haven't seen you in the entire Yellow Sand City, and you haven't come to find me." Yu Qianzhou waited for him to sit down before asking, "It doesn't matter where I went. How's the news about the purple flames?" Huang Tian raised his hand and stopped him. He frowned and sighed. "Don't ask about the purple flames for now. The Immortal City is in a mess now. It's not good to ask about it. It's not too late to ask after things stabilize. Don't run around during this period in case something happens." Yu Qianzhou sized him up and asked curiously, "You don't look too good. Did something happen in the Immortal City?" Huang Tian sighed softly. "Immortal Lord Night Owl and 2 Netherworld generals are dead. Immortal Lord Dancing Ji is also heavily injured. Everyone in the Immortal City is in danger, afraid that the madman will appear again. Who has the mood to help me ask about the purple flames?" Yu Qianzhou's eyes widened. He could not sit still anymore. He stood up and asked in disbelief, You mean the madman who challenged the Immortal Lord last time appeared again? He even killed Immortal Lord Night Owl and 2 Netherworld generals? That's right. Huang Tian shook his head and sighed. I don't know where this person came from. Not only is he getting stronger the more he fights, his cultivation is also improving at a godly speed. This time, the 2 Immortal Lords and the 2 Netherworld generals had joined forces to capture him and interrogate him about the way to enter and exit the Heaven and Earth Qianquan formation. Who knew that he who had been injured by the 2 Immortal Lords last time would appear this time? With the exception of Immortal Lord Ji Wu, the other 3 were all dead. It's really hard to imagine, what kind of cultivation method can increase one's cultivation so quickly in this world. Yu Qianzhou sucked in a breath of cold air and sat down on the ground. He knew that Bai Chongqun was fierce, but he didn't expect him to be so strong that he couldn't believe it. How long has it been? He actually killed 3 immortal monarchs. Are you sure this news is true? Yu Qianzhou gulped and asked. Frowning, Huang Tian snapped, Do you think I would joke about something like that? As he spoke, he stood up and said, The fence gathering is over. I still have things to arrange. We'll continue to inquire about the purple flame after the situation has cleared up. Everyone, don't be anxious. It's better to be careful. Wait. Yu Qianzhou stopped Huang Tian, who was about to leave. He walked closer and asked, Tell me the truth, what happened at the fence gathering? What did the warriors that were sent to the Immortal City do? Huang Tian shook his head and said, I'm not too sure about the specifics. I only know that most of them were sent to mine spirit stones. After all, spirit stones are extremely difficult to mine, and those with weak physiques can't handle it. Some of them were directly taken away by Immortal Lord Night Owl. I don't think many people know what they're doing. Yu Qianzhou frowned and said, Then why did they keep some people in the fence gathering, and let most of them live in the most primitive state? Aren't you quite smart? I've already made it so clear, why can't you figure it out? Huang Tian said disdainfully, Spirit stone mines are extremely difficult to mine, and they need people with strong physiques. Didn't you realize that the primitive natives' bodies are stronger than the people in the fence gathering? The natives are raised for manual labor, while the people raised in captivity are raised so that the immortal cultivators don't have to live like barbarians and eat raw meat. Everyone is locked up in the Heaven and Earth universe formation, so they have to find some fun, right? Otherwise they'll suffocate to death. After saying that, he pointed at Yu Qianzhou's head as if to say that he was a blockhead. Then he turned and left. Raised in captivity? Yu Qianzhou was stunned on the spot. Those 2 words made him speechless. He didn't expect the immortals here to raise humans like animals. He sighed and shook his head slightly. He knew that there was nothing he could do about it. These immortals were used to being high and mighty, so why would they care about mortals? In their eyes, mortals were no different from animals. It was good enough that they raised them and didn't kill them. As he thought about it, his thoughts returned to Bai Chongqun. He realized that the old fellow really lived up to his title as the #1 expert in the world. He was so strong that he was perversely strong, and wherever he went he killed. Just as he thought about it, his eyes suddenly opened. He faintly felt that the old fellow was about to leave and probably wouldn't come back to the East Holy Land. Think about it. The old fellow killed 3 of the 2 immortal monarchs and 2 netherworld generals in the East Holy Land, and these 4 were the ones with the highest cultivation in the East Holy Land. With the old fellow's personality, the East Holy Land probably couldn't interest him anymore. The next step would probably be. Just as he thought about it, he was stunned again as he felt Lady Mu's summon. He frowned slightly, not knowing what was going on. In a flash, he charged into the mud wall and disappeared. Once he appeared on Obedient Island, Yu Qianzhou looked around but didn't find anything strange. Lady Mu, who was not far away, had already noticed him. She quickly walked towards him and bowed, saying, Mr. Old Lord is back. The old lord she was talking about was naturally Bai Chongqun. Yu Qianzhou immediately teleported back into the house, but he saw that it was empty. There was no sign of Bai Chongqun at all. When he turned and walked to the door, he saw Lady Mu rushing over. He immediately shouted in a low voice, What's going on? Lady Mu immediately replied fearfully, Mr. Please listen to me first. Old Lord has indeed returned just now, and he even asked me about you. I wanted to ask you to come back, but Old Lord said there was no need for that. After he walked around the island for a while, he left. Once he left, I felt that I should tell you about it immediately, so I immediately came to find you. In fact, Old Lord has just left almost right after you. With a flash, Xianxia appeared on the roof outside. He looked around at the obedient island that was still the same as before and let out a sigh. It seemed that his guess was right. The old man was really going to leave. He came back this time to take one last look at the obedient island that he had stayed in for 1,000 years. It was likely that he would never return after leaving. The human world could no longer keep such a heaven-defying character, and such a heaven-defying character should no longer stay in the human world. This was his destiny. Lady Mu. Which direction did Old Lord go? Xianxia suddenly shouted from the roof. He thought that Bai Chongqun might have something to tell him when he came back. Lady Mu immediately stretched out her hand and pointed in the air, saying, Old Lord went in that direction. Xianxia followed her finger and saw that it was in the direction of Chilly Wind Valley. As he expected, the old man should have gone to the netherworld through the 9th netherworld cave. Then he asked again, You mean Old Lord has just left? Lady Mu immediately replied, That's right. It happened almost right after you came back. He might even make it in time. Xianxia instantly disappeared from the roof, and after appearing in a remote area of Utopia, he immediately closed his eyes and sensed Bai Chongqun's movements. Judging from the direction, Bai Chongqun should have just entered the 9th netherworld cave. So fast. Xianxia opened his eyes in shock. He did not expect Bai Chongqun to enter the 9th netherworld cave so quickly. It had only been a while since he left the obedient island. The old man's cultivation was indeed terrifyingly high. Without another word, he disappeared on the spot. In order to stop Bai Chongqun, he simply teleported and appeared in front of the netherworld gate. The moment he appeared, he immediately sized up the eerie and terrifying surroundings. After all, the netherworld envoy had appeared here previously, and he did not know if there would be any danger. In the huge underground space, the netherworld fire sea was still burning fiercely, and the black miasma lingering in the sky surged. The group of skulls on the walls of the netherworld Iron Mountain were still as ferocious as ever, and the majestic netherworld gate did not move. The feeling this place gave off was still as shocking as ever, and it seemed like nothing had changed. The saw mark he had left on the netherworld gate was still there, and the missing knocker had not been replaced. It seemed like there was no danger. At this moment, someone behind him suddenly said, Why are you here? Who is it? Xianxia was shocked. He turned around and saw Bai Chongqun, who was dressed in a green robe, looking at him in surprise. He immediately patted his chest with lingering fear and said, Master, why didn't you make a sound? You'll scare people to death in this place. Bai Chongqun looked around and asked curiously again, Why are you here? What are you trying to get? Xianxia patted his chest and heaved a sigh of relief. He replied, When I just returned to Shantian Island, I heard from Lady Mu that you had returned and left. I asked in which direction you went and guessed that you were coming here, so I came here to wait for you. Bai Chongqun nodded slightly, indicating that he understood. Then he walked with his hands behind his back and quietly sized up the surroundings. Xianxia followed behind him and asked with a smile, Master, I heard that you killed a celestial monarch and 2 netherworld generals in the East Holy Land, and even injured a celestial monarch. Is this true? Bai Chongqun replied with an N, and as he looked around he said indifferently, I wanted to kill them all, but after thinking about it, I left one alive for you. Maybe you'll need such an expert to practice with in the future so that you can prepare to explore the immortal and netherworld realms in the future. Xianxia, who was following behind him, paused. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he followed up again. He said, Master, you think too highly of me. You actually left an celestial monarch expert for me to practice with. I guess I won't be able to use her. Her level is really too high. Don't compare me with you. I don't care if I can use her or not. Maybe there'll be a day where I can use her. It's better to be prepared now than not. Besides, there's no point in me killing her anymore. The Holy Eastland needs a leader to intimidate the small fry. Otherwise, once chaos breaks out, the ones who will suffer will be those mortals, Bai Chongqun said in a carefree manner. Chapter 787. Haha. Master has a benevolent and compassionate heart. It is truly a blessing for all living beings in this world to have Master presiding over it. Why don't you just stay? Xianxia chuckled and flattered. Bai Chongqun was indifferent to his flattery. Expressionlessly, he stared at the mountain wall made of skeletons, which looked as if they were alive. Then he slowly said, No one can protect the human world for generations to come. The way of heaven has its own rules. If the heavens have feelings, they will grow old. The right path of the human world is full of vicissitudes. The things that should be experienced can never be avoided. I should have left long ago. He tried to persuade him again, but to no avail. Yu Qianqiu simply shut up. He knew that since the old man had come to the underworld gate, there was no use in persuading him. He silently accompanied Bai Chongqun, accompanying him to inspect the underground space that was different from the human world. In the huge space that flickered, the master and disciple slowly walked to the front of the majestic underworld gate. Even with Bai Chongqun's high cultivation, standing in front of the gate gave people a feeling of insignificance. Separated by a gate, the difference between the human world and the netherworld made Bai Chongqun, who had his hands behind his back, feel a little emotional. Bai Chongqun stared at the portraits of men, women, old and children painted on the door for a long time. He carefully observed them over and over again. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. In the end, he slowly closed his eyes and furrowed his brows as if he was contemplating something. Yu Qianqiu was a little curious. He also looked at the carvings on the gate but didn't see anything unusual. After a long time, Bai Chongqun slowly opened his eyes and gazed at the gate again. He stared at the heaven-swallowing beast's head that was missing a knocker. Then he looked back at Yu Qianqiu meaningfully and said, "This gate contains the truth of the great Tao. It's extremely profound. I'm afraid it's not something that the Underworld Emperor or the Immortal Emperor could build. I don't know how long it's been guarding here. Since it was destroyed by your hands, I'm afraid you'll have to give it a perfect ending." These words were very mysterious. Yu Qianqiu was confused and scratched his head. "Give it a perfect ending? Master, what do you mean?" All things in the cycle of reincarnation have a beginning and an end. The end is the beginning and the beginning is the end. This is called reincarnation and perfection. Bai Chongqun explained. Faster, Xikemi. What the hell? Why was it even more mysterious than what he had said before? The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He nodded with a silly smile. Actually, he didn't understand a single word. He was just pretending to understand. He didn't want to ask anymore. The answers he received were getting more and more mysterious. It was easy for the speaker, but it was hard for him to listen. However, not long after Bai Chongqun said these words, the entire underground space immediately produced many chaotic echoes of different heights, but they were all repeating Bai Chongqun's words. The portraits of men, women, old and children on the underworld gate seemed to have come to life in an instant. They were reciting along with Bai Chongqun, and their voices echoed in the huge underground space. The lifeless airflow in the underground space instantly became restless, whistling wildly. The flames in the netherworld flame sea suddenly rose and fiercely burned, seeming extremely mysterious and strange. Yu Qianqiu looked around dumbfoundedly. If these words didn't come from Bai Chongqun's mouth, if Bai Chongqun wasn't still by his side, if Bai Chongqun's expression was still calm, he would have already teleported away. The netherworld flame sea that was burning fiercely gradually calmed down. When the strange scene in the underground space calmed down again, Yu Qianqiu finally let out a sigh of relief. He looked at Bai Chongqun with eyes full of worship. This old fellow's cultivation was really high, so high that it was unfathomable. He even knows how to use spells to heighten the atmosphere. This is an expert. It's worth learning, it's worth learning. Suddenly his eyes popped out. His expression was like he had seen a ghost as he stared at the underworld gate. Originally, the portraits of men, women, old and children on the gate had all kinds of strange expressions. Happiness, anger, sorrow and happiness were all there, depicting all kinds of life. However, at this moment, the expressions of the portraits of men, women, old and children on the gate had all turned into smiles. Each and every one of them revealed a satisfied smile, as if they had been enlightened by Buddha and had already escaped from the sea of bitterness. This. Yu Qianqiu's mouth opened so wide that his fist could be stuffed inside. He pointed at the underworld gate, bewildered, and pointed again and again, asking Bai Chongqun to quickly look. However, Bai Chongqun's expression was indifferent, as if he didn't care at all. Yu Qianqiu closed his mouth and quickly rubbed his eyes. He thought that he was hallucinating, but in the end the smiling faces on the underworld gate were still there. He swallowed his saliva and ran to the front of the gate to touch it. It seemed like it was real and not an illusion. Oh my God! Yu Qianqiu stumbled back a few steps in succession. Turning his head back to look at Bai Changchun, he pointed at the netherworld gate with a backhand and said with a sheepish smile, "A master, why your cultivation is really high, too high." He simply couldn't believe it. Just a few words could change the expressions of the people on the underworld gate. Moreover, it was so lifelike without a trace. This cultivation was just too terrifying. Was he still human? He was simply a god. "Move aside," Bai Changchun said lightly. Yu Qianzhou gave an "oh" sound and quickly moved to the side. Bai Changchun stretched out his hand that was behind his back and pushed the underworld gate in front of him. Yu Qianzhou immediately felt a majestic aura rush out, gently but powerfully pushing the underworld gate. With a rumbling sound, a crack appeared on the majestic underworld gate, and an eerie aura immediately blew out from the crack. The airflow in the underground space instantly became incomparably chaotic, and the netherworld flame crazily danced. As the crack on the gate became wider and wider, a dense cold wind blew out from inside and swept through the underground space. The light flickered rapidly. Even with Yu Qianzhou's current cultivation, it was a little hard for him to stay where he was. He quickly held the underworld tablet next to the underworld gate. After the gate was opened to about a meter wide, Bai Changchun faced the strong wind and slowly walked out as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Yu Qianzhou knew that Bai Changchun was about to leave the human world and head to the underworld. After a series of complicated expressions, he suddenly shouted, "Master, do you have anything else to say to this disciple?" As the strong wind blew, Bai Changchun turned around and stared at him with bright eyes. He indifferently smiled and said, "Walk your own path. Don't let me down." A short sentence couldn't be considered an explanation. After he finished speaking, he resolutely turned around and didn't stop at all. His body turned into a ray of green light and disappeared into the black whirlpool behind the underworld gate. After he entered the underworld gate, it closed with a rumble until it was seamless. The entire underground space gradually returned to its calm state. Yu Qianzhou looked at the closed underworld gate in a daze. He seemed to be in a daze. He couldn't understand why parting was always unavoidable in life. He suddenly clenched his fist and shouted, "Master, I definitely won't let you down. You will see it in the future. I will definitely let you see it." These words seemed to have been said a little too late. It seemed like he should have said it before Bai Changchun left. However, this shout seemed to have used up all of his strength. He weakly leaned against the underworld tablet and slid to the ground. There was no sadness of parting on his face, only a lonely smile. He sat there alone and shook his head with a faint smile as he recalled the past between the master and disciple. He sat there alone for a very long time. When he woke up again, his emotional side was once again restrained. He had a shrewd expression on his face as he jumped up. No one knew what he thought of, but he directly dove into the netherworld flame sea and appeared at the entrance of the netherworld cave. He stared at the cave wall and found the inscription on the wall. "Damn it! The old man has gone to the netherworld realm to stir up trouble. I hope he doesn't come up with some netherworld envoy who wants to find me by name." Yu Qianzhou muttered to himself. He found the words that he had inscribed on the wall. Then he covered his palm with a green flame and rubbed it against the wall a few times, erasing all his words. After seeing Nongzhu's inscription, he originally didn't want to care about it. Maybe one day he could see Nongzhu's excitement. However, after thinking about it, if something happened to Nongzhu, he would inevitably be implicated. Therefore, he completely destroyed Nongzhu's inscription and Bai Changchun's. After doing all this, he looked along the winding netherworld cave and suddenly thought of Yu Ji outside. He remembered that he had promised her that if he had the ability, he would help her leave the Demon Spectre region. Now that Bai Changchun was gone, the Demon Spectre region was completely under his control. If he let a ghost cultivator out, he could be sure that there would not be any trouble. It was time to fulfill his promise. He disappeared directly. When he appeared in the chilly wind valley, it immediately caused a commotion among the ghost cultivators. He hadn't announced the succession of the Demon Domain Torture Master in the Demon Domain, mainly because he didn't want to cause a commotion in the Demon Domain. Now he didn't have time to take care of the Demon Domain every day, so it was good to continue to use the old guy's prestige to deter people. Even so, everyone in the chilly wind valley knew that he was above tens of thousands of people in the Demon Domain, so they were very respectful. Yu Qianzhou asked if Yu Ji was there. As a result, Yu Ji and other key figures in the chilly wind valley were checking the entrance of the netherworld cave because of the change. Yu Qianzhou asked someone to find Yu Ji and said that he had something to talk to her alone. A ghost cultivator immediately went to report. He directly entered the Ghost King's hall without any hindrance and went straight to Yu Ji's throne and sat down. Almost at the same time when he sat down, Yu Ji had already flashed in quickly. She quickly walked to the throne and bowed, saying, "Greetings, sir." Sitting on the throne, Yu Qianzhou looked at the charming Yu Ji with a smile and asked lightly, "Yu Ji, do you remember a promise I made to you when I first met you and General Meng? Now it's time for me to fulfill this promise." Yu Ji's delicate body trembled. She looked at him and bit her lips tightly, looking very excited. It seemed that she didn't expect that this day would really come. However, when she looked around the empty Ghost King's hall, she was stunned, and her face gradually became gloomy. She slowly knelt down in front of Yu Qianzhou and said with a lonely smile, "Thank you, sir." At first, Yu Ji wanted to leave with the general, but now the general is gone. No matter how colorful the outside world is, Yu Ji doesn't want to enjoy it alone. Chapter 788. Yu Qianzhou left Ill Wind Valley and returned to Lust City's inn. Previously, under his repeated inquiries, Yu Ji finally rejected his good intentions. She did not want to abandon Meng Yan's old subordinates, and decided to continue being her Ghost King. Yu Qianzhou did not expect this female ghost to be so loyal. He had underestimated her. Now he felt that this woman could be used, but it depended on whether there was a chance. At the same time, Bai Changchun's departure affected him greatly. Seeing the gap between him and his master widening, he was even more determined to work hard. Just as he said in front of the Netherworld Gate, he hoped that he would not disappoint Bai Changchun when he saw him again. After knocking on Immortal Lord Crocodile's door, Yu Qianzhou closed the door and walked straight to Immortal Lord Crocodile, who was sitting cross-legged, and said indifferently, "Come, let's go to the Immortal City." Immortal Lord Crocodile was startled. What's wrong? He did not know why this fellow who always talked about safety decided to take the risk. This Huang Tian is a small character in the East Holy Land. I don't know how long it will take for him to help me find information about the Purple Fire. I can't wait. Yu Qianzhou's gaze was resolute. Let's take the initiative and go to the Immortal City. There should be people there who know. Immortal Lord Crocodile pondered for a moment. With my current cultivation, if something happens to the Immortal City, I might not be able to protect you. Don't worry, I can protect you, Yu Qianzhou said with a chuckle. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at him and sneered. Protect me? Are you kidding? If that's the case, why drag me along? You can go by yourself. Yu Qianzhou said shamelessly, if you can't beat us, then run. Did you forget that we can leave the East Holy Land? Immortal Lord Crocodile was speechless. He slowly said, I advise you not to take this risk. There are many experts in the Immortal City. I can hide my identity from others, but I can't hide it from Yi Xiao and Ji Wu. With their cultivation, I'm afraid they can see through me at a glance. All Ji Wu. Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows and sneered. I almost forgot to tell you. Yi Xiao and the two Netherworld generals hiding underground have already been killed by my master. That Ji Wu was also severely injured by my master. She was lucky to survive. How would she have the time to visit you? What? Immortal Crocodile stood up abruptly and exclaimed, Are you telling the truth? Cut the crap. Let's talk on the way. Yu Qianzhou threw out a few silver balls and glanced at him. Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes out of habit. When the two of them reappeared, they were already on a yellow plain outside the city. This was the place where Yu Qianzhou had been cultivating his earth formula. The two of them didn't know where the Immortal City was. Back then, Immortal Lord Crocodile didn't have a so-called Immortal City in the Holy East Lands. Fortunately, when Yu Qianzhou was chatting with Huang Tian, he had kept an eye out and figured out where the Immortal City was. It should be in the center of the Holy East Lands. After the two of them determined their direction, they quickly flew toward the center of the Holy East Lands. Along the way, under Immortal Lord Crocodile's strong request, Yu Qianzhou roughly told him about Bai Changchun's glorious feat of killing Owl Ji, shocking Immortal Lord Crocodile. When Yu Qianzhou casually mentioned that Bai Changchun had already gone to the Netherworld realm, Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. There was a hint of admiration in his solemn expression. He didn't think that he had underestimated Bai Changchun's strength. Based on Bai Changchun's ability to defeat two Immortal Lords and two Netherworld generals, it was obvious that even if his cultivation was at its peak, he wouldn't be Bai Changchun's match. As they flew, Immortal Lord Crocodile also confirmed his guess. Xianxia's cultivation had indeed reached the soul formation stage. This left Immortal Lord Crocodile speechless. The master and disciple's cultivation speed was too abnormal. After flying out of the vast yellow plains, they immediately entered a primeval forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. The two of them didn't dare to be ostentatious, afraid that they would be discovered. Thus they tried to fly close to the treetops in the valleys of the mountains. If anything happened, it would be convenient for them to hide. The mountains rose and fell, the green forest was like a wash, and the landscape was like a painting. Along the way, Immortal Lord Crocodile remained vigilant, and Xianxia also became more interested in enjoying the scenery of the forest. However, just as he was enjoying the view, Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly pulled him into the dense forest below. As soon as they landed, Xianxia immediately held his breath and focused. He knew that Immortal Lord Crocodile wouldn't do this for no reason. He must have discovered something. Without another word, he pointed his finger and immediately burrowed into the ground with Immortal Lord Crocodile. The surface of the ground slowly returned to normal as the two of them dove into the ground. It could be said that Xianxia used the same trick again. The two of them hid under a small slope, revealing two small holes under the luxuriant weeds for the two of them to observe the movements outside. After waiting underground for a while, Xianxia didn't discover anything. He couldn't help but ask via voice transmission, "Old monster, what did you discover?" In the end, before he could finish speaking, they heard the sound of intense fighting coming from afar. Even the hole that the two of them were hiding in was shaking. Mud and sand fell, covering the two of them with a layer of soil. Such a big movement could be heard from so far away. One could only imagine that the cultivation level of the people fighting was not low. Xianxia immediately used the earth art to strengthen the soil around them, preventing them from being buried alive. The sounds of the fierce battle lasted for a long time before it died down. After waiting for a while, Xianxia asked via voice transmission, "Old monster, the fight seems to be over. Can we go out and continue on our way?" Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly frowned and stretched out his index finger to make a silent gesture. He closed his eyes and listened. Without hesitation, Xianxia immediately stuck his head against the mud wall, narrowed one eye, and blindly looked out of the hole. He saw the branches and leaves of a few trees in front of him rustling, and a beautiful figure came out and landed directly on the ground. After stumbling and holding onto the tree trunk, she quickly looked around vigilantly. Xianxia's narrowed eyes instantly lit up. This was a graceful woman dressed in a white palace robe. Her arms were covered by long flowing cloud sleeves and her hair was a little fluffy. There was a bright red bloodstain on her snow-white chin. Her beautiful appearance was not the slightest bit inferior to Lu Yanqing. Whether it was in terms of temperament or aura, she was even better. She seemed incomparably elegant and noble. She pushed the tree trunk away and staggered a few steps. Suddenly, her eyebrows furrowed slightly and she looked like she was in pain. Her chest heaved up and down and she spat out a mouthful of blood. In the blink of an eye, her eyes closed slightly and she fell to the ground, motionless. It was obvious that she had suffered serious injuries. Xianxia looked around again. When he looked back, he saw that Immortal Lord Crocodile was also staring outside with a serious expression. He immediately felt happy. He thought to himself, "Old thing, why are you pretending to be so serious? I have seen you in the cannibal tribe. You are called a man on the outside." He immediately sent a voice transmission and chuckled. "Old monster, that woman outside is beautiful, right? Are you tempted? Do you want to take the opportunity while she's unconscious to bring her in to take a look at her?" Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly turned around and stared at him. Just as a cold smile appeared on his face, he suddenly froze and frowned. He hurriedly sent a voice transmission. Quick, bring her in." Xianxia winked and smiled. He looked outside and used the earth spell. The woman was instantly swallowed by the wave of earth and sank into the ground. However, in the blink of an eye, more than a dozen streams of light flashed and appeared, all of them full of murderous intent. Xianxia was shocked. He immediately held his breath and did not dare to move. The leader was a burly bald man in black with a fierce look on his face. His bald head was shiny and he had big eyes without eyebrows. He was looking around with a fierce look in his eyes. After glancing at the blood on the ground, he hooked his index finger and a bloody leaf fell into his hand. He gently crushed it with his fingers and snorted coldly. He opened his mouth and spoke in an unusually hoarse voice. He waved his hand and said, "That B*T is seriously injured. She can't run far. Everyone spread out and search." Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately sent a voice transmission to Xianxia. "Quickly dive down and hide, or we won't be able to hide from them." Xianxia naturally knew without the need for him to say anything. Hiding in such a shallow and close distance would not be able to hide from even a soul formation expert, let alone an immortal from the Eastern Holy Land. Moreover, the other party had the intention to search. He immediately used the earth spell to its limit. He grabbed the unconscious woman with one hand and pulled Immortal Lord Crocodile with the other. They quickly dove deep and far away. The movement of the underground soil immediately attracted the gazes of the dozen people to the small slope where the two of them had been hiding. The bald man shouted in a hoarse voice, "Underground." The dozen people attacked almost at the same time without hesitation. All kinds of dazzling lights shot out from their hands. Bang! There was a deafening sound as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. In an instant, the soil within a radius of nearly 1,000 meters flew everywhere. Countless trees and plants were instantly turned to ash. Amidst the scorched smoke, the dozen people were covered in a layer of transparent protective light shield. Their gazes were like torches as they looked down from the sky. Under their combined attack, a huge vortex-shaped pit with a radius of 1,000 meters appeared in the deep primitive forest. It was charred black and hundreds of meters deep. The dozen people's gazes penetrated the smoke and fog with their perception. They quickly scanned the ground, but they did not find any movement. They looked at each other and at the bald man in black. Their reactions were considered fast. They did not expect someone to be able to escape underground so quickly. It was probably as fast as flying. It was simply unbelievable. The bald man narrowed his eyes and looked down. He said slowly in a deep and hoarse voice, "Earth manipulation art? Could the earth manipulation spell allow him to escape so quickly underground? Could it be that I'm ignorant?" Everyone shook their heads, indicating that they had not heard of it. The bald man snorted coldly. "I have never heard of that woman using the earth element art. Did someone save her?" As soon as he said this, someone immediately cupped his hands and reported, "According to what I know, the city lord of Lust City, Huang Tian, knows the earth manipulation art. Also, Lust City is not far from here. Could it be him? Old man Huang Tian? Just him?" The bald man laughed coldly and said, "It's not that I look down on him, but his tricks can only be used by a 3-year-old child to play hide and seek. They can't even be mentioned in the same breath as this kind of earth elemental technique. They are not on the same level at all. Yet he wants to escape underground with a person?" Chapter 789. I was speaking nonsense. That person cupped his hands and then he frowned and said, "That's strange. According to my knowledge, Huang Tian was the only one who knew how to control Earth amongst the people who survived all those years ago. Could it be that there's someone else? No matter who he is, since he doesn't dare to fight us head-on, there's no need to be afraid of him." The bald man in black suddenly looked at them and ordered in a hoarse voice, "Gather our people and search with all our might. We must find that B*T before she recovers. Once she recovers, all of us will have to bear the consequences." Yes. Everyone bowed and accepted the order, then quickly dispersed. At this time, Xianxia and the other two were wrapped in a bubble underground. The soil layer in front of them quickly parted and the soil behind them closed up again. They were like fish in water or like stray dogs fleeing in panic. Xianxia held the injured woman with one arm, his eyes closed and the fingers of his other hand stretched forward, using the earth manipulation technique to quickly open up a path. Immortal Lord Crocodile placed both palms on Xianxia's back, pushing Xianxia forward quickly. The two of them could be said to be complementing each other. One of them did not have enough cultivation, but the magical earth manipulation technique could break through the soil and open up a path, while the other used his profound cultivation to act as an engine, pushing Xianxia at full speed. Even so, there was blood at the corner of their mouths and their faces were pale. Although the two of them had dodged the joint attack of more than a dozen people and did not hit them head-on, they were too close and could not teleport like they could outside. In addition, the combined power of those people was indeed strong. A strong impact was like hitting a cow across a mountain, quickly injuring the two of them. Fortunately, Xianxia's reaction was quick and he instantly used the earth manipulation technique to cause the ground to fluctuate, immediately dissipating a lot of the strong impact. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for them to escape. Even so, the two of them were still seriously injured. Old monster, stop. Xianxia suddenly opened his eyes and shouted. Immortal Lord Crocodile quickly stopped. In fact, he had also discovered that along the way, large rocks had appeared all around them. Xianxia was having some difficulty opening a path. He kept making detours through the mud between the rocks. Looked like he was flying fast, but in fact he was not running far. Old monster, how far have we run? Xianxia asked again. He should be hundreds of miles away. Immortal Lord Crocodile said. Pa. Xianxia suddenly raised his hand and fiercely slapped the woman's plump buttocks. Immortal Crocodile immediately shouted, Xianxia, what are you doing? Damn it. What do you think I'm doing? Xianxia looked at the person in his arms and said unhappily, in order to help you save the damsel in distress, I almost lost my life. Do you still have a problem with me taking advantage of her? Damn it. It feels good. As he spoke, he did not hesitate to pinch her. Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at his actions in shock, then looked at the woman in his arms. The corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. While he was in a daze, Xianxia had already thrown the woman onto the ground without any mercy. He slowly walked forward with his palm outstretched. The soil parted, and before long a huge grayish-white stone appeared from the soil. He pressed his palm on the stone, slightly tilted his head and closed his eyes silently. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at his strange actions and did not know what he was up to. Suddenly he saw a faint smile appear on Xianxia's face. The huge rock that he was pressing on suddenly melted like snow, and a 2-meter-wide stone appeared in front of him, continuously extending inside. Xianxia put his palm out and closed his eyes as he walked inside. The smile on his face became wider and wider, as if he had discovered something. Immortal Lord Crocodile saw that he could control rocks as easily as he controlled the earth, and was immediately surprised. Without a doubt, this kid must have just comprehended it. Previously, when he encountered rocks, he had to go around in circles. Seeing that he was getting further and further away, Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly looked around. He did not know how deep underground they were, and he could not lose him or it would be troublesome to get out. So he hurriedly picked up the woman that Xianxia had casually thrown to the ground and quickly followed. After following behind Xianxia for a few hundred meters, he could not help but ask, "How did you do it?" Hearing this, Xianxia stopped, opened his eyes and looked around. He smiled faintly and said, "So it works like this. I'm really a genius." His face was full of pride. When he was escaping underground, he was constantly blocked by rocks and had to go around them, which made him very angry. But at that moment, the scene of extracting metals from ores in his previous life flashed across his mind. With the mentality of giving it a try, he used the metal conjuration art on the rock and found that there seemed to be a little reaction from the rock, but it was still indifferent. So he tried using the earth art and metal art together, and a miracle happened. He had never thought that using the earth art and metal art together could produce such a miraculous effect, but this was not what made him the happiest. The happiest thing was that he had found another way to use the 5 elemental arts. It turned out that the 5 elemental arts could be used together, which meant that the 5 elemental arts had a lot of potential. Xianxia reached out and touched the stone wall again, then turned to look at Immortal Lord Crocodile and said, "The back of this stone wall seems to be empty. Could we have found some treasure?" He suddenly thought of the strange experience of finding the divine spirit stone when he first came to the demon ghost region. Immortal Lord Crocodile rolled his eyes and said speechlessly, "Dream on. How can it be so easy to find a treasure? Besides, no one would bury something so deep, right? Maybe it's an underground karst cave. We'll know once we open it." Xianxia nodded and pushed with his palm. The stone wall immediately melted and spread in all directions, and the stone passage quickly extended forward. Suddenly, a light appeared in the darkness a dozen meters ahead, and it was opened. Treasure light? The two looked at each other, and Immortal Lord Crocodile was even more speechless. Could it be that this kid was right, that there was really a treasure here? Without a word, Xianxia flashed over and stood at the exit at the end of the passage. Immortal Lord Crocodile followed behind, and with just one look he could not help but laugh. In fact, it was not Xianxia who had guessed right, but he himself who had guessed right. There was no treasure here, and the underground space in front of them was indeed an underground karst cave. The two rushed into the karst cave one after another. There was a pool in front of them with stalactites of various shapes and sizes on both sides. There were also many stalactites hanging upside down above the cave, with crystal-clear water droplets dripping into the river, making crisp and melodious tinkling sounds. The strangest thing was that there was colorful fluorescent sand everywhere in this karst cave, making the entire karst cave shine brightly. This was also why the two saw the light. Tsk tisk. Xianxia stood by the pool and exclaimed. Immortal Lord Crocodile did not know what he saw. He placed the woman in his hands on the ground, walked to the side of the pool, and immediately understood the reason for Xianxia's surprise. There were living aquatic animals in this pool, and the strange thing was that these aquatic animals' bodies could actually glow. The floating crown-like jellyfish's crown shone with light. The stealth transparent white shrimp's abdomen also shone with blue light. There were also some fish whose heads, tails, or backs glowed with colorful light. They were all very beautiful aquatic animals that lived peacefully in this undisturbed pool. The depths of the pool were pitch black, seemingly bottomless. It was probably connected to an underground river. Immortal Lord Crocodile tilted his head to look at Xianxia. Seeing him smiling foolishly with blood at the corner of his mouth, he touched his mouth and squatted by the pool to clean himself. Xianxia glanced at it, then lowered his head to look at his own reflection in the water. He squatted down to wash up as well. When he was done, he turned around and saw that Immortal Lord Crocodile was taking out an immortal pill to feed to the woman. He couldn't help but walk over and tease. Old monster, did you fall in love with me because I'm pretty? I advise you to think carefully. This woman's cultivation level is not weak. Don't save your enemy. Do you know her? Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded silently, indicating that he knew her. He calmed down and helped the woman refine the immortal pill. After a long time, he slowly laid the woman down. After that, he sat down cross-legged at the side and swallowed a celestial pill to heal himself. However, he noticed that Xianxia was looking at the woman up and down with malicious intent. He frowned and took out the bottle of celestial pills and handed it over. He said, if you're injured, then stop for a moment and heal yourself first. I don't need it. Xianxia subconsciously waved his hand. He stared at the woman lying on the ground and clicked his tongue. This woman is really beautiful. She's stunning. Immortal Lord Crocodile paused and asked in surprise, you don't need to heal yourself. Xianxia was taken aback, then he laughed and said, medicine is 30% poisonous. I usually resist as much as I can and try not to take medicine. Although he said that, in fact there was another hidden reason. The gene Dan in his body was very magical. Every time he was injured, it would immediately play a miraculous effect to help him recover. It was faster than taking any panacea. At this time it seemed that he had almost recovered. Hearing this, Immortal Lord Crocodile put away the bottle in his hand and closed his eyes to heal himself. Take your time to heal yourself. I'll go out and see what's going on outside. Xianxia threw down these words and in a flash he rushed out of the hole he came from and quickly rose to the surface. When he sensed the surface he could not help but click his tongue. It turned out that they had already run thousands of meters underground. Like Zhou Xian, he quietly poked his head out of the ground and looked around. When he realized that he was still in the forest, he quickly got out of the ground and flashed to a tree. He hid in the dense foliage and looked around. In the end, he was secretly shocked to find that there were people flying quickly in the air around him as if searching for something. He shrunk his head back and immediately dove headfirst into the ground, disappearing without a trace. When he returned to the underground cave, Immortal Lord Crocodile opened his eyes and looked at him. What's the situation outside? Xianxia shook his head and stared at the woman on the ground who was still unconscious. There are people searching everywhere. We can't go out for now. Who is this woman? Why are they mobilizing so many people? It seems like they won't stop until they find her. Great, I'm afraid we'll have to stay here for a while. Chapter 790. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the unconscious woman with a serious expression and said in a low voice, she's badly injured. You don't have to tell me that, I can tell. Xianxia squatted down next to him and winked at him. Old monster, tell me, who is she? Was she an old flame of yours? Immortal Lord Crocodile looked over and stared at him, who was smiling mischievously. He sneered. Who is she? Haven't you guessed it yet? She was once one of the 12 great immortal lords in the celestial world. Xianxia's eyes were slightly confused and then his smile froze. He seemed to have thought of something and his mouth twitched. He pointed at the unconscious woman and asked weakly, You mean she's Ji-woo? Immortal Lord Crocodile sat there motionlessly and sneered. If she's not her, then who do you think she is? Yu Qianzhou's outstretched hand jerked back as if he had been electrocuted. He said with a stiff expression, Old monster, don't joke with me. How could she be Ji-woo? With Immortal Lord Ji-woo's strength, who in the East Holy Land would dare to touch her? He felt a chill down his spine when he thought of how he had just pinched and slapped this woman's butt. If I'm not wrong. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked back at the woman on the ground and sighed. This might have happened because of your master. She was probably severely injured by your master first and then she fell into their trap. Otherwise they wouldn't have dared to touch her so easily. She's really Ji-woo. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. His gaze lingered on the unconscious woman's pretty face. Even though there were bloodstains on her face and she looked haggard, it couldn't hide her cold and aloof temperament. She was clearly someone who had been above others for a long time. Her messy hair was resting on the ground, and her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. There was a hint of anger between her smooth white brows. Damn it. This woman was clearly not someone to be trifled with. She was still holding a grudge even when she was unconscious. A ruthless expression gradually appeared on Yu Qianzhou's face. His eyes flickered as he stood up and slowly walked towards the unconscious Ji-woo. His every move fell into Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately shouted, Yu Qianzhou, what are you trying to do? Nothing. Yu Qianzhou's gaze was deep and indifferent as he said, While she's down, I'll take her life. Stop. Lord Crocodile leaped to his feet and stood between the two of them. Yu Qianzhou, she has no grudge against you. Why did you kill her? It's better to nip some things in the bud. Yu Qianzhou narrowed his eyes and said, If she wakes up and finds out that it was my master who injured her and what I did just now, based on her abilities, if she goes berserk, I won't be able to handle it. Rather than making such a strong enemy, it's better to kill him first and get rid of future troubles. Are you crazy? Immortal Lord Crocodile shouted. If you don't say and I don't say, who will know that it was your master who injured her? Who will know what you did to her just now? Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows and asked suspiciously, You really won't say? Don't worry. I know what I can say and what I can't, Immortal Lord Crocodile said impatiently. Then forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything. Yu Qianzhou flung his sleeves and acted as if nothing had happened. He turned around and found a place to sit down. Before Immortal Lord Crocodile could say anything, Yu Qianzhou interrupted. Old monster, who are those people chasing after Ji-woo? The anger on Immortal Lord Crocodile's face disappeared. He frowned and snorted. They should be Yi Zhao's men. That bald man in black is called Rakshasa, and he is an early-stage immortal emperor. He is Yi Zhao's disciple. Rakshasa probably wants to seize power while Ji-woo is injured after Yi Zhao is dead. Yes. From what you said, I think it's possible. If Ji-woo is dead, that bald man might become the boss of the East Holy Land. Yu Qianzhou nodded slowly. As he was thinking about this, he suddenly realized that Immortal Lord Crocodile was taking off his clothes. In the blink of an eye, he was only left with his underwear. Yu Qianzhou's mouth opened wide. He looked at the unconscious Ji-woo, then at the almost naked and muscular Immortal Lord Crocodile. He said in surprise, Old monster, you don't have to be so anxious when you see your lover. As he said that, he quickly got up and waved his hand. I don't like to watch live performances. I'll go back in 4 hours. Is that enough? Immortal Lord Crocodile snorted and could not be bothered with him. He knew that whenever this kid was free, the more he bothered with him, the more trouble he would cause. He flung his long hair and his braids were instantly untied. He took out a yellow pill and walked to the side of the pool. He crushed the yellow pill into powder with his palms and mixed it with the pool water. He began to rub it on his hair and face and bit by bit his whole body. Soon his whole body looked like it was covered in black paste. Immortal Lord Crocodile dived into the pool, and the clear pool water instantly turned murky. When he walked out of the pool again, his body had recovered to its original fair complexion. He turned around and water splashed everywhere. Suddenly his body was wrapped in a layer of white light. When the white light disappeared, he was already dressed in a silver robe. With his long silver hair draped over his shoulders, the dignified Immortal Lord Crocodile appeared again. Yu Qianzhou looked at him with a disgusted expression, a naughty smile on his face. Immortal Lord Crocodile's hair stood on end. He took out another yellow pill from his storage bracelet and threw it to him. You should recover too. Xianxia caught the yellow pill and looked at it. He put it away and said, I'll stay like this for now. It's more convenient when I'm in the Holy East Lands. Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He looked at himself and did not say anything. He walked to the side and sat on the ground. Xianxia looked at him, then at the unconscious Ji Wu on the ground. He finally could not help but snicker. Old monster, I really couldn't tell. You're quite mindful of your image in front of a beautiful woman. Immortal Lord Crocodile was not afraid of his mockery. He said calmly, of course. Although my cultivation is not as good as before, I was one of the 12 great immortal lords with her. There's no reason for her to look down on me. There are always setbacks in life. When one is down and out, one does not catch the eye of one's acquaintances. He will rise again in the future. It's human nature. I understand. Xianxia did not continue to provoke him. He tilted his head to look at the unconscious Ji Wu. When will she wake up? It should be about time. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head slightly. When she wakes up, she will be able to take care of herself. She will recover quickly. As he spoke, he suddenly frowned and flashed to Ji Wu's side. Xianxia looked over. Ji Wu's eyebrows moved slightly and her eyes slowly opened. Perhaps because she suddenly realized that there were people beside her, and her subconscious was still in the pursuit, she was on high alert. She disappeared on the spot and flashed into the air. Her long cloud sleeves fluttered and her white clothes fluttered. She looked like a fairy descending. Her bright eyes flashed and she said sternly, Who are you? As soon as she said that, she frowned and covered her abdomen with one hand. A trace of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. Her expression was one of pain. She was obviously seriously injured. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately raised his hand and shouted, Sister Ji Wu, you have not recovered from your injuries. Don't be rash. Look carefully. Don't you recognize me? Ji Wu's body trembled and she slowly raised her head. Her bright eyes fell on Immortal Lord Crocodile, revealing an expression of disbelief. After looking at him repeatedly, she confirmed that it was true. She immediately floated to Immortal Lord Crocodile's side like a fairy. She said hoarsely, Brother Crocodile, you are still alive? But your cultivation, how weren't you killed by the Thousand Swords Demon Lord? Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly, causing the cave to tremble. His laughter was full of sorrow. After a long time he replied firmly, I was killed by the Thousand Swords Demon Lord. Unfortunately, I was lucky and I was not killed. I was suppressed for more than 100,000 years. As he spoke, he waved his hand and patted Xianxia's shoulder. Xianxia's body tilted and his eyes rolled back. He sighed and said, Thanks to this little brother, I was able to escape and see the light of day again. Xianxia pushed Immortal Lord Crocodile's hand away and tried to stand up straight. He smiled at Ji Wu and nodded kindly. Then he said to Immortal Lord Crocodile in a graceful manner, It's not worth mentioning, not worth mentioning. It's my duty, my duty. I am a person who loves to help others. Ji Wu glanced at him and ignored him. Then she looked at herself and said happily, Could it be that Brother Crocodile saved me at the critical moment? Xianxia still maintained a smile on his face, but in his heart he regretted not slapping her a few more times. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and patted Xianxia's shoulder again. He said, What a coincidence. You and I were both saved by him. Don't you think this is God's will? He was the one who saved me. Ji Wu was startled. Only then did she re-examine Xianxia. She immediately discovered that she couldn't see through his cultivation. Immediately she was shocked. She shook her sleeves and wrapped them around her arms. She bowed slightly and said, Ji Wu thanks you for saving my life. May I know who you are? You flatter me, you flatter me. Xianxia's hands were like flowers. He smiled and said, It's my duty, my duty. I am born to help others. Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand to stop her. Sister, don't bother with him. This kid has a glib tongue and is full of nonsense. He is only a soul formation cultivator. It was just a coincidence that he saved you. He is not a master. Then he frowned and asked, Why did Luosha want to kill you? Ji Wu looked suspiciously at Xianxia, who was embarrassed. She immediately told Immortal Lord Crocodile about how Bai Chongqun started a massacre in the Immortal City and how she was chased. It was just as Immortal Lord Crocodile had guessed. After being injured by Bai Chongqun, she was ambushed by Luo Sha and the others while she was recuperating. That was why she ended up like this. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Yu Qianqiu meaningfully. It seemed to be saying, your master injured her and you saved her. Your merits and demerits offset each other. Don't expect her to owe you a favor. In fact, Yu Qianqiu did not intend for Ji Wu to owe him a favor. Instead, he was worried that Immortal Lord Crocodile would expose the fact that his master was Bai Chongqun. He still hoped that Ji Wu would tell him where the purple flames were. It would be best if there was no conflict. Chapter 791. When the two old friends met, they naturally talked about many things. Their savior Yu Qianqiu was completely ignored. Yu Qianqiu didn't think much of it. He listened quietly at the side. He could tell that these two had a good relationship back in the immortal world. After chatting for a while, they talked about how they were being hunted. Ji Wu immediately gritted her teeth and said, I won't let those Rakshasa people off. In a fit of anger, she covered her abdomen with her hand again, and a trace of blood seeped out of the corner of her mouth. According to her, she almost never interfered with anything in the East Holy Land. This mainland was basically ruled by Yishao. She had always been hiding in the West Palace. If it wasn't for Bai Chongqun causing havoc in the Immortal City and Yishao asking her for help, she wouldn't even have shown herself. However, she had never imagined that she, who had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, would be regarded as a stumbling block by the disciples of the Night Owl sect after she was injured, and they would launch a sneak attack on her. This was also the reason why she was so angry. Immortal Crocodile immediately raised his hand to comfort her. Sister, don't worry. It won't be too late to take revenge after you recover. They won't be able to escape from the Heaven and Earth Universe array. As he spoke, he took out a bottle of pills and handed it over. I was overjoyed to see Sister. I spoke too much and almost delayed Sister's recovery. If there's anything, it won't be too late to talk about it after you've recovered. Ji Wu took over the bottle and poured out an immortal pill that was shrouded in a purple mist. For a moment, the entire karst cave was filled with a strange aroma that could refresh one's mind. Ji Wu looked at the elixir in her palm and smiled bitterly. Everyone has been sealed by the Heaven and Earth Qianquan array for so many years. Everything that needs to be used has been used up. Fortunately, we met Brother Crocodile. Otherwise, I don't know how long it would take for my little sister to recover. Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled bitterly and said, I'd rather use up all these things than be suppressed for 100,000 years and have my cultivation level greatly reduced. I don't know how long it will take for me to recover. But that's good too. I can finally put it to good use today. To be able to help Sister, it's worth being trapped for so many years. Saying so, he suddenly exclaimed, Sister, don't you have a golden fur immortal ape? Why don't I see him? Could he have been killed by Luo Sha and the others? Yu Qianqiu's ears perked up. Ji Wu shook her head and smiled bitterly. That's not it. Brother Crocodile, you might not know this, but the Heaven and Earth Universe array is really strange. After the last battle with the Thousand Swords Demon King, the immortal beasts and spirit beasts that we brought from the immortal world all showed abnormalities after a few years. The Heaven and Earth Universe array seemed to be absorbing the spiritual energy in their bodies. As a result, those immortal beasts and spirit beasts withered year by year. In the end, not a single one of them could last for 30,000 years and all of them died. I see. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly. Yu Qianqiu, who was at the side, seemed to have thought of something. He immediately sent a telepathic message. Old monster, ask him what's going on with the fence meat. This had always been a mystery in his heart. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at him and changed the topic. Ji Wu frowned slightly and said, other than mining, the main reason why those warriors came was because Yishao had obtained a scroll of magic left behind by the demon Dao. It was said that it could break the Heaven and Earth Universe array's seal, but it needed strong men to refine it. No one knew how many people had died in the experiment. More than 200 years ago, the Night Owl had successfully sent a disciple out. However, after that disciple went out, there was no news of him. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Originally, after this fence meet, Yishao was going to try it himself. Who knew that a lunatic would suddenly appear and ruin Yishao's dream? More than 200 years ago, Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He finally understood where the immortal that the old man killed in the East Sea more than 200 years ago came from. He had never figured it out. It turned out that the immortal had escaped from the heaven and earth universe array. However, that person was too unlucky. He could have met anyone in the human world, but he actually met the top expert in the world. It was not an ordinary kind of bad life. He escaped from the heaven and earth universe array, but he was killed. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and smiled bitterly. So what if he got out? I'm afraid that person will not be able to return to the celestial world. Jiwu was startled and said, Brother Crocodile, why do you say that? Did something happen outside? Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at Yu Qianqiu, but Yu Qianqiu knew what he was going to say. He kept signaling him with his eyes, trying to persuade him not to say it. After hesitating for a while, Immortal Lord Crocodile said, Yu Qianqiu, you don't have to worry. I believe that Sister Jiwu is not that kind of person. Yu Qianqiu wanted to tell him that one could not know a person's heart, but he knew that anything he said now would be fake. Jiwu looked at the two of them with a puzzled expression. She did not know what the two of them were talking about. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Jiwu and said, The immortal ascension stage in the human world has been set up with the soul transformation smoke. With Yi Zhao's cultivation, even if he wanted to return to the celestial world through the netherworld realm, it would be difficult for him to pass through the netherworld realm. That's why I said it would be difficult for him to return to the celestial world. Jiwu squeezed the immortal pill in her hand, her eyes flashing. After a moment of hesitation, she asked, Brother Crocodile, how do you know that the immortal ascension stage has been set up with the soul transformation smoke? Immortal Lord Crocodile explained, To tell you the truth, I have a way to enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array. I have been to the immortal ascension stage once and saw the soul transformation smoke set up with my own eyes. What? Jiwu exclaimed. Brother Crocodile can enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array? To her, the soul transformation smoke was no longer important. The most unbelievable thing was that Immortal Lord Crocodile could enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array. Damn it. They say that heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. I thought it was referring to people like me. I didn't expect demons to have a weakness for beauties too. Yu Qianqiu cursed silently. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded slightly. He waved his hand and slapped Yu Qianqiu again. His eyes rolled and he sighed. Don't underestimate him. Although his cultivation level is not high, his master is not to be underestimated. His master. Old demon, you can't burn bridges after crossing the river. Yu Qianqiu swatted away the arm that was slapping his shoulder and roared crazily. This time he was really angry. He did not expect Immortal Lord Crocodile to reveal all his secrets. But you don't want to find the purple fire anymore? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked calmly. Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He pointed at Immortal Lord Crocodile and sneered. You win. If you don't take my words seriously, then we'll see who is more ruthless. Immortal Lord Crocodile paused. He remembered that he did promise not to say anything. In addition, he still needed Jiwu's help to leave the heaven and earth universe array. He immediately turned and said, Sister Jiwu, let me ask you something. You have been here for many years. Do you know where the purple fire that supports the heaven and earth universe array is hidden? Purple fire? Jiwu paused. Seeing that Immortal Lord Crocodile had changed the topic, she knew that he would not say anything more. However, thinking that even Immortal Lord Crocodile said that Yu Qianqiu's master was not to be underestimated, she did not dare to underestimate Yu Qianqiu. She stared at Yu Qianqiu seriously and said, Why are you looking for the purple fire? No one can go near that place. Sister, don't say any more. Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand to stop her from continuing. He asked, When we first fought the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, I remember that you saved Silver Armor Soldier's life. Silver Armor Soldier gave you a token, saying that if you encountered any trouble in the netherworld, you could ask him for help. If the two of us break into the netherworld, are you confident that you can get the Silver Armored Army to escort us back to the immortal world? Jiwu's bright eyes immediately flashed with extraordinary splendor. She seemed very excited. She never dreamed that there would be a day when she could escape the cage of the heaven and earth formation. After he calmed down a little, he seemed a little hesitant and said, There is such a thing, but the Emperor of the Underworld has never been too fond of the people of the immortal world. I'm afraid that even the Silver Armor Army may not be able to make this decision. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded with approval. If Jiwu had agreed immediately, he might have been skeptical about what would happen next. But now it seemed that Jiwu was still the same Jiwu from back then. He immediately laughed and said, "You don't have to worry about this. I have dealt with the Silver Armored Army a few times. He is a man who values friendship and is also the commander of the Emperor of the Underworld's guards. He is highly regarded by the Emperor of the Underworld. As long as he is willing to help, the chances of the Emperor of the Underworld not giving him face are very small. You will definitely help him return this favor." He turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Yu Qianqiu, I believed you at first when you said that you could help me recover my cultivation. But after thinking about it, I really felt that it was a little unreliable. Let's not talk about the past. Now that I have met Sister Jiwu, I have hope of returning to the immortal world. Please help me. As long as you send us out of the heaven and earth formation, I will ask Sister Jiwu to tell you where the purple flames are. It is much better than asking around blindly and taking great risks." Then he secretly transmitted his voice. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone the secret of you collecting the purple flames to cultivate the Samadhi true fire. This is mainly because of your master who is worthy of my respect. Besides, I might as well warn you in advance that you may be able to collect the purple flames, but if you want to fuse them into the Samadhi true fire, I'm afraid your current cultivation is far from enough. You better take care of yourself." Damn it. He was indeed a shrewd old man. He had been deceived by his silly appearance. At the crucial moment he was playing tricks on him. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He should have thought of this earlier. How could a person ranked among the 12 great immortal monarchs of the immortal world be simple? He was just pretending to be ignorant. "Tell me, where is the purple flames?" Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and said. Jiwu could obviously see that there seemed to be a story between the two. She looked at Immortal Crocodile inquiringly, asking if he should tell her. Immortal Crocodile pondered for a moment and said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't misunderstand and don't overthink it. I have absolutely no ill intentions towards you. Similarly, I trust you." He then turned to Jiwu and nodded. "Tell him first." Jiwu looked up and down at Yu Qianqiu with a somewhat curious gaze. She slowly said, "In the easternmost region of this continent, there's a barren wasteland where not even a blade of grass grows. Someone once saw traces of purple flames there. Why don't you go there and take a look?" Chapter 792. The Easternmost Land? Yu Qianqiu was surprised. In the easternmost part of this continent? Jiwu nodded slightly to confirm. Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and asked, "Do you have a specific location?" "The easternmost land is too big. Can you be more specific?" "I can't be more specific. No one knows the specific location because no one can go deep into it. In addition, rumor has it that the purple fire appears and disappears randomly. You can't see it unless it's by chance. Those who have seen it before are purely coincidental. So I can't tell you the specific location," Jiwu explained. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded. "That depends on your luck." Yu Qianqiu was silent for a long time before he raised his head to look at the two. His gaze landed on Immortal Lord Crocodile and he slowly said, "Old monster, I can bring the two of you out of the heaven and earth universe formation, but you have to promise me that you will not stay in the human world." Before he finished, Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand indifferently. "You worry too much. You don't have to worry about that. It's meaningless for us to stay in the human world. Once we're out of the heaven and earth universe formation, we'll go straight to the netherworld and return to the celestial world. From then on, if fate allows it, we'll meet again in the celestial world." "All right," Yu Qianqiu said firmly. "I believe you. I hope you're not lying to me. Otherwise, I'll send you off now." "Wait." Jiwu stretched out her arms and said with a hint of anger in between her brows, "Now is not the time to leave. Wait until I recover and kill those Rakshasa people. We can't just let them go like this." Those who could make it to the celestial world's 12 great immortal lords were indeed not to be trifled with. Beauties were no exception. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Jiwu and thought. Immortal Lord Crocodile frowned and said, "Sister Jiwu, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." Jiwu was startled. She seemed to have guessed what Immortal Crocodile was going to say. Her eyes flickered and she bit her lip. She bowed slightly and said, "Brother Crocodile, if you have something to say, just say it. I will listen." "Sister, It is indeed important to recover from your injuries first. But revenge. Immortal Lord Crocodile hesitated for a while and said slowly, in my opinion, if you really want revenge, don't you think trapping the Rakshasa and the others here forever is the greatest revenge? Besides, I'm worried that things might change if we delay. Of course, I'm just saying. You can make the decision yourself. Jiwoo bit her lip. She seemed to have made up her mind and said, Sister, listen to Brother Crocodile. Give me 3 days to heal. Immortal Crocodile nodded in satisfaction. He looked at Xianxia and said, wait for us for 3 days. Bring us out of the heaven and earth Qian-kun array 3 days later. How about that? Sure, Xianxia agreed. He walked to the side and sat down with his eyes closed. He looked calm on the surface, but he felt that he had agreed too rashly. However, there was nothing he could do. With their cultivation levels, he could not do anything to them. Immortal Lord Crocodile must have known that. If he didn't agree, Jiwoo's injuries would heal sooner or later. Once she recovered with her cultivation level, the Holy East Land would be her world, and it would be very difficult for him to have the chance to collect the purple flames again. Jiwoo also swallowed the immortal pill and immediately sat down cross-legged to heal her injuries. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the two of them and sat down cross-legged in between them. Inside the cave, the sun and the moon did not know. To them, time was like a flash of light in the cave. 3 days in the cave passed quickly. Xianxia's heart was not at peace during these 3 days. He kept thinking of countermeasures in case something unexpected happened. In less than 3 days, Jiwoo was the first to stand up, feeling refreshed. Immortal Lord Crocodile opened his eyes and smiled. Sister, how do you feel? Jiwoo bowed and said, it's all thanks to Big Brother Crocodile's elixir. Otherwise, I would not have recovered so quickly. Let me freshen up first, then I will leave the Heaven and Earth universe formation with Big Brother Crocodile. After saying that, she turned and walked to the pool. She did not even take off her clothes. The pool water slowly submerged her. The water rippled and there was a white figure dancing under the water. Damn it. How could she bathe like this without taking off her clothes? Xianxia was speechless and a little disappointed. However, when the beauty came out of the water again, Xianxia's eyes lit up. Jiwoo slowly walked out of the water. Her long hair was wet and her skin was smooth. She had washed away the blood on her body. Water droplets dripped from her cold, pretty face. She was like a thorny rose in the morning, enduring the dew. Coupled with the sunlight in the cave, it was really tempting. She raised her hands high and tied her long hair into a bun again. The palace gauze wrapped around her body, accentuating her exquisite curves. However, good things did not last long. As soon as Jiwoo walked to the shore, a white mist rose from her body. As the mist dissipated, the hibiscus out of the water instantly returned to her cold and dignified appearance. She seemed to notice that someone was looking at her. She stared at him coldly with a murderous look. Xianxia shivered and immediately turned his head to the side awkwardly. He saw Immortal Lord Crocodile staring at him with a sneer. It seemed to be saying, I don't even dare to look at you. You're really brave. Xianxia coughed and stood up. He glanced at the two of them and said indifferently, can the two of you leave now? Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Jiwoo inquiringly. Jiwoo nodded. He also stood up and explained to Jiwoo, he's going to use a magical teleportation array. He'll need the girls' cooperation later. Close your eyes first, he told Jiwoo what Xianxia had told him. The latter frowned slightly and muttered softly, teleportation array? Although she did not understand, she trusted Immortal Lord Crocodile and nodded in agreement. Everyone stand closer. Xianxia put on an act and called the two of them to his side. Then he threw a few small silver balls at them. Then he formed hand seals and muttered something. Jiwoo looked at Immortal Lord Crocodile in confusion. Seeing that he had already closed his eyes, she hesitated for a moment and closed her eyes as well. In the blink of an eye, Jiwoo heard a shrill wind in her ears. The temperature dropped a lot. She noticed that her surroundings seemed to have changed. Her eyes moved under her eyelids. She wanted to open her eyes to take a look, but she did not dare to take the risk. In the end, she held back. Xianxia looked around and smiled at the two of them. Okay, we're here. The two of them opened their eyes at the same time, only to see that their surroundings were dark and gloomy, and the chilly wind was howling. In front of them was a gloomy and terrifying cave with its mouth wide open, like a monster opening its mouth and roaring. The strong chilly wind was blowing out from that cave. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Ji Wu looked at each other. The latter cried out, "Ninth Netherworld Cave." Ji Wu was in disbelief. She took a few steps forward and stood at the edge of the cliff. She stared at the cave opposite and said in a trembling voice, "It's really the Ninth Netherworld Cave." She turned back and said excitedly, "Big Brother Crocodile, am I dreaming? This is the Ninth Netherworld Cave. I'm really out of the Heaven and Earth universe formation. Is this real?" Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled and nodded. He turned to Xianxia and said, "Thank you. We will keep your secret. We will never tell anyone about it. I hope we will meet again in the immortal world." He stretched out his hand and said, "Give me a storage bag." "What for?" Xianxia asked suspiciously, but he still took out a storage bag and handed it to Immortal Lord Crocodile. After Immortal Monarch Crocodile received the interspatial pouch, he immediately took out a bunch of shiny black things from his storage bracelet and put them into the interspatial pouch. Xianxia's eyes widened in shock and his heart thumped wildly. Divine Grade Spirit Stones. Is it for me? Sure enough, Immortal Monarch Crocodile handed it back to Huang Xiaolong with a smile. "I don't have anything to thank you with, but I can see that you like spirit stones. Here are 200 million Divine Grade Spirit Stones. Take it as our thanks for your help. With a beauty by my side, I have to be polite." Xianxia's heart itched, but he pretended to be serious and grabbed the storage bag tightly. He pretended to decline. "You're too polite. We helped each other and it's just a small favor. There's no need to be so polite." Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at his hand that was clutching the storage bag tightly. He shook his head and laughed. If you can successfully return to the immortal world with little sister Ji Wu, with her cultivation, these spirit stones are nothing. If you can't return smoothly, it's a waste to keep these spirit stones. You should just accept them." He let go of the storage bag. Since you've put it this way, I won't be unreasonable." Xianxia quickly stuffed the storage bag into his robe and touched his chest. A smile bloomed on his face. Suddenly his eyes turned and he took out a small silver ball. He pretended to inject a few spells into it, then grabbed Immortal Lord Crocodile's hand and stuffed it into his palm. Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He was very familiar with this thing. He asked, "What do you mean?" "That." Xianxia sighed. "As you said, I hope we'll have a chance to meet in the immortal world. If you can successfully pass through the netherworld and return to the immortal world, you can scatter this small silver ball somewhere in the immortal world. If I really have a chance to go to the immortal world, I'll be able to sense it. At least I'll know that you've arrived safely. If possible, I might go find you, old monster, to reminisce about old times. Do you welcome me?" Immortal Lord Crocodile paused, then immediately laughed. "Hey, it's a deal. We'll meet again in the immortal world if there's a chance." He put the silver ball in his hand into his bracelet. Xianxia took 2 steps back and cupped his hands at the two. "I wish the two of you a smooth journey and a safe return to the immortal world. Please." He raised his hand and gestured to the entrance of the 9th Netherworld Cave. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Ji Wu looked at each other. The latter nodded slightly at Xianxia to express his gratitude. Then they turned into 2 rays of white light and flashed into the 9th Netherworld Cave. Xianxia stood on the cliff, facing the chilly wind blowing out of the cave expressionlessly. He seemed to be waiting for something. After a long time, the 9th Netherworld Cave suddenly spewed out a strong ink-black chilly wind. The howling of the wind was mournful. After a while it slowly calmed down. He slowly heaved a sigh of relief. The change in the 9th Netherworld Cave just now meant that someone had opened the gate to the Netherworld and finally sent these 2 great gods away. Chapter 793. Although Immortal Crocodile did not do anything wrong, Xianxia still felt that Immortal Crocodile was the one who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. Thinking of this, he wanted to give Immortal Crocodile a few more silver balls and ask him to help him throw some into the Netherworld, but he was afraid of arousing Immortal Crocodile's suspicions, so he held back in the end. After being distracted for a while, he turned around and saw Yuji and the others from the Evil Wind Valley bowing to him. Obviously they were attracted by the changes in the 9th Netherworld Cave. Xianxia waved his hand expressionlessly and said, "There's nothing else, disperse." After saying that, he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was back in the karst cave where he had stayed before. He looked around and found that he was the only one left, so he was a little disappointed. Then he seemed to have thought of something and snickered again. He looked at his palm and sighed. Even in the immortal world, who has ever touched a mortal monarch dancing G's butt? I've touched it, hee. Amidst the laughter, he took off his clothes and changed into the almost naked fur clothes of the cannibals. Then he carried a spear, flashed into the cave wall and quickly rose to the surface. After reaching the surface, he poked his head out and looked around. Seeing that there was nothing unusual, he climbed out of the ground. After determining the direction to the east, he carried his spear and flew through the forest at a moderate speed. Along the way, he hunted a few wild pheasants, tied his legs and carried the spear on his shoulder. Swinging his braids, he continued to hurry on his way. He looked valiant and heroic as well as romantic and elegant. However, the movement in the sky was too big and there were people flying over every few days. He had no choice but to stop and use his feet to cross the mountains. Whenever this happened, he could always feel that someone was spying on him. With his impenetrable cultivation and realistic disguise, he was lucky enough to pass. In the end, he realized that this method was stupid and too dangerous. Why didn't he use the earth element method? He identified the direction and sank hundreds of meters underground, using the earth art to fly quickly. Along the way, when he encountered rocks blocking his way, he would immediately use the earth and metal arts at the same time. When he encountered the obstruction of an underground river, he would immediately switch to the water arts. It could be said that his journey underground was unimpeded. Other than popping his head out from time to time to check if he had gone in the wrong direction, he basically buried his head in the pitch-black underground. He even thought that even Earth Traveler, son of the Divine Sealed Decree, might not have been as awesome as he was. While he was lost in his thoughts, Xianxia, who was speeding underground, suddenly came to an emergency stop. He used the earth spell to sense and confirm again. He frowned and muttered, "It's empty in front. Is it another underground cave?" He slowly moved forward and drilled into a stone wall. After moving forward for about 10 meters, he felt that he had reached the edge of the space in front of him. He quietly stuck his head out to take a look and was shocked. He quickly retracted his head. Who would build a hall hundreds of meters underground? Xianxia was bewildered. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, so he stuck his head out of the green stone wall to take a closer look. This time he was certain that it was indeed an underground palace. Moreover, it was a very grand underground palace. The interior of the palace was filled with an ancient and thick, eerie and terrifying aura. There were some fluorites embedded in the surroundings, but there weren't many of them. The dim lighting made the palace even more eerie and terrifying. In a moment of curiosity, Xianxia carried a spear on his shoulder and a few wild pheasants on it. He tiptoed out from the stone wall. He carefully looked around, focusing on the dark passage that connected to the palace. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he discovered that there wasn't a single person. There wasn't a single chair in the palace. It was completely empty and spotless. There was only a high platform in the center that had steps leading up to it. On the high platform there was a pentagonal platform. There was a stone carving on the stone wall behind the platform. It seemed to be the back view of a scholar writing in front of a writing desk. The carving was very lifelike, but the face couldn't be seen. It seemed mysterious and strange. Xianxia was getting more and more curious. Why would the stone carving on the main seat use the back view of a scholar as the main character? What was the meaning of this? Could it be that this scholar had some unusual meaning? He looked at the stone walls on his left and right, and was attracted by the stone carvings on the walls on both sides. On both sides there were 6 men wearing mighty battle armor. Their faces were lifelike, but they were all different. However, each of them had an extraordinary aura. There were a total of 12 people on both sides. All of them were facing the portrait of the scholar's back on the stone wall, as if they were in awe of the scholar, giving the impression that they were all the scholar's subordinates. Could it be that this was an underground palace used for sacrificial ceremonies? Who would dig a palace several hundred meters underground? Xianxia carried a spear with a few wild pheasants on it. He stood in the main hall and rubbed his chin. Suddenly his body trembled. He looked at the 12 armored statues on both sides in a daze. He suddenly remembered that there was a group of practitioners from the underworld in the Eastern Holy Land. It was said that they lived in the underground world. Could this underground palace be the 12 underworld generals of the underworld? Could they be the 12 underworld generals of the underworld? Xianxia stared at the stone carving of the scholar on the main seat on the high platform. He gasped and mumbled to himself, "Could it be that this scholar is the legendary emperor of the underworld?" How could the Emperor of the Underworld be a scholar? That's right. He is the Emperor of the Underworld, the ruler of the Underworld. A woman's voice rang out behind him. Xianxia was startled. He turned around hastily and accidentally threw the few dead wild pheasants on the spear far away. He saw a woman in black clothes with half of her face covered by a black veil. She had long hair that reached her shoulders. Other than the black veil on her face, she had no other accessories on her body. Although she looked like a living person, the deathly energy on her body was even heavier than that of Yuji of the Chilly Wind Valley. She was looking at him curiously. Who are you? Xianxia held the spear with both hands and pointed it at her. His action seemed a bit childish. The mysterious woman glanced at the wild pheasant that had fallen to the ground, then looked at Xianxia's almost naked attire, and a stunned expression appeared on her face as she asked in a puzzled voice, "Are you a native from another tribe?" Then she reacted and said with a frown, "It's impossible. How could a native of the outside world break into this place? Who are you?" Xianxia had calmed down and was ready to leave at any time. He put away the spear and walked over to pick up the wild pheasants he had thrown aside. He put the pheasants on the spear and put them on his shoulder again. He looked at her and sneered, "You don't dare to show your true face. Where did you come from? How dare you break into this place?" "I broke into this place?" The woman paused and said, "This is the sacred hall I built myself. I am the Underworld Saintess appointed by His Majesty the Emperor of the Underworld. How could I be a female thief?" Xianxia was startled when he heard this. He didn't expect that this woman would tell him all her secrets just by asking casually. Why did he feel that she was a bit stupid? With a tentative attitude he asked, "The Underworld Saintess? How come I have never heard of it? What does the Underworld Saintess do?" "Preside over all the important ceremonies of the Underworld," the mysterious woman asked rhetorically. "You don't even know this?" "I think I have heard of it," Xianxia said disapprovingly. He relaxed his vigilance a little. He had already evaluated this so-called Underworld Saintess as an idiot 80%. But he still didn't dare to underestimate her. He was afraid that he would run into another person who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. "Who are you? How could you enter the sacred hall?" the Underworld Saintess asked. "What's so strange about that?" Xianxia pointed at the passageway behind her and said, "Of course I walked in from there. Otherwise, where do you think I came in from?" "Impossible." The Underworld Saintess shook her head and said, "Unless there is some important ceremony, even the 12 Netherworld generals under the Emperor of the Underworld wouldn't dare to break into this place." "Are you serious?" Xianxia raised his eyebrows and asked suspiciously, "If that's the case, your status in the Underworld is even higher than the 12 Netherworld generals? Your cultivation level is also higher than theirs." "My cultivation level isn't as high as theirs, but they are very respectful to me and have always protected me," the Underworld Saintess said calmly. "Have always protected you?" Xianxia sneered and said, "Why did I hear that the 2 Netherworld generals here have already been killed? How can they still protect you?" "That's because they have completed their mission. I no longer need their protection. This is also their destiny." The Underworld Saintess spoke slowly and then walked over gracefully. Xianxia quickly dodged to the side. However, he saw that she had no intention of doing anything to him. Instead, she silently walked past him and walked up the stairs to the high platform. Xianxia realized that this woman didn't make any sound as she walked. It was no wonder that he didn't know she was behind him. She walked to the back of the pentagonal platform and faced the bottom. She nodded slightly at Xianxia and said, "Come up." "What?" Xianxia asked casually. However, this woman's words and actions always gave off a gentle and harmless vibe, causing people to involuntarily let down their guard. He thought for a moment and followed her instructions. He carefully walked up the stairs with the long spear in his hand. When he walked up to the high platform, he realized that the pentagonal platform was actually a sand table. It was filled with fine black sand. The Underworld Saintess stretched out her pale hand from her black sleeves and picked up a thin silver stick from the sand table. She gently swept the surface of the sand table until it was flat. Then she said to Xianxia, "Use your left hand to press a handprint on the sand table." "What?" Xianxia asked again. However, he still shifted the spear from his left shoulder to his right shoulder. He stared at the Underworld Saintess without moving his eyes. He was afraid that she would play tricks on him. However, he was staring at his left palm from the corner of his eyes as he gently pressed it on the black sand table. However, just as his palm pressed on the sand table, he suddenly felt an inexplicable restlessness in his heart. He felt strange. Why did he have to do as she said? He immediately rubbed his palm and erased the handprint on the sand table. He stared at the underworld saintess and sneered, "Why should I listen to you?" Chapter 794. The netherworld saintess didn't answer. Her gaze was calm as she stretched out her pale right hand and slowly pressed it on the black sand table. Although the originally flat sand table had been messed up by Yu Qianzhou, she still accurately found the position where Yu Qianzhou pressed his palm. The position where their palms pressed overlapped. Yu Qianzhou looked at her suspiciously. He didn't know what this so-called netherworld saintess was doing. Although he didn't know what the face under the black veil looked like, judging from the delicate outline of the upper half of her face, her appearance shouldn't be too bad. Under her brows that were like distant mountains, her eyes were slightly closed, revealing a faint puzzled expression. The netherworld saintess opened her eyes and withdrew her pale palm from the sand table. She stared at Yu Qianzhou and asked curiously, "Why is it like this?" "Like what?" Yu Qianzhou's gaze swept over the sand table, but he couldn't see anything. He expressed his suspicions and asked, "What are you doing?" The netherworld saintess swept the sand table with her silver rod again, and then gently placed it on the sand table. A silver line was immediately inlaid on the fine black sand. The two colors were very conspicuous, suddenly giving people a mysterious and shocking feeling. Yu Qianzhou's heart thumped. He felt that something was strange and quickly looked away. The netherworld saintess looked at him with a serene and peaceful gaze. It was filled with a purity that stood aloof from worldly affairs, and also seemed to contain the light of wisdom that could see through everything. After carefully sizing up Yu Qianzhou, the black veil revealed a strange tone and said, "Your life should have ended long ago, but why are you still alive and well? What a strange fate, even I can't see through it. What are you babbling about? You, the netherworld saintess, can't be a witch, right?" Yu Qianzhou sneered. Suddenly, the smile on his face froze and the corner of his mouth twitched. He suddenly thought of something from the sentence, "Your life should have ended long ago." Whether it was him in his previous life or this body in this life, as the netherworld saintess said, his life should have ended long ago. The other party's words made him feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He coughed and asked tentatively, "I say, saintess, do you know how to read fortunes?" The netherworld saintess suddenly fell into silence. Her clear eyes suddenly turned pitch black as if there were stars swimming in them. Yu Qianzhou was immediately startled and he looked at her nervously. After a long time her eyes finally returned to normal. She looked at him quietly and said, "You are a variable. I can't figure out your fate. I can't predict your fate. The two netherworld generals who protected me have fallen. It seems that I will not be too long before I return." Yu Qianzhou was tickled by her mysterious words. He scratched his head and asked again, "You really know how to read fortunes?" "I don't know how to read fortunes, but I try to understand the fate of others. It is my honor to be able to understand the fate of others," the netherworld saintess said calmly. When she said this, he could actually feel a sense of piety and holiness from her body. She really had the demeanor of a master of metaphysics. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. The more humble a person was, the more he believed that they were truly capable. He casually threw the spear on his shoulder along with a few hard pheasants off the stage. He rubbed his hands excitedly and respectfully and asked for guidance. "Respected saintess, my life is long and full of confusion. Please understand my fate. Let me know how I should walk in the future so that I can make as few mistakes as possible." The netherworld saintess quietly shook her head and said, "Your fate is full of variables and I can't understand it. Even if I can understand the fate of others, I won't tell anyone. Otherwise, I will change the fate of others and that will be my sin. I will lose the ability to understand the fate of others. Don't force me. Even the emperor of the underworld never forces me." Having said that, she turned around and bowed to the sculpture of the emperor of the underworld on the stone wall with her arms folded. Then she walked around the pentagonal stage and walked down the stairs. Yu Qianzhou followed her obediently and said, "I won't let you tell anyone about it. You can just point me in the right direction and let me use it as a reference. I don't think it's too much to ask of you, right?" The netherworld saintess walked slowly toward the passage, ignoring him. Yu Qianzhou said, "Hey," a few times. Finally he couldn't help but say angrily, "I think you are a liar. You obviously don't know anything but you still pretend to be profound." The Netherworld Saintess, who was near the entrance of the passage, suddenly turned around and stared at him. Goading her worked. Xianxia stopped, his expression stiff. "It's easy to prove that you are not a liar. You can calculate how many wives I will have in the future, how high my cultivation will be, and how long my lifespan will be." He asked a series of questions in one breath because he guessed that this woman might be someone with great ability. Otherwise, how could she be appointed as the Netherworld Saintess by the Emperor of the Underworld? Moreover, she was easy to talk to and didn't have a bad temper. He wouldn't miss such an opportunity. "Xianxia, I can't help you. You should leave the way you came. Don't follow me anymore. The people outside the Divine Hall won't be as polite to you as I am to you." Having said that, the Netherworld Saintess turned around and left. Xianxia was immediately dumbstruck. From the moment he had entered, he had never mentioned his name. Yet the other party had actually called out his name. Xianxia suddenly shouted at the departing figure, "Since you already know my name, what's your name?" "I don't know where I come from. I don't know what my name is, and I don't know who I am. Maybe I don't even have a name. From the moment I woke up, the Emperor of the Underworld told me that I came from the endless darkness, and that I am the Netherworld Saintess. From that moment on, they all called me the Netherworld Saintess, so I am the Netherworld Saintess. I don't have a name. I am the Netherworld Saintess, and the Netherworld Saintess is me." As the figure of the Netherworld Saintess disappeared into the depths of the long tunnel, the voice also faded away. Xianxia stood alone in the dim underground sacred hall for a while. He wanted to go out with the Netherworld Saintess, but he didn't dare to. Just as the Netherworld Saintess had said, the meditation practitioners outside would not be polite to an intruder like him. Looking around the holy palace once more, he suddenly felt as if he was dreaming. He had suddenly appeared here, and then a woman who claimed to be the Underworld Saintess had suddenly appeared. After a baffling conversation, he felt as if it was all very surreal. It was as if the two of them were destined to meet here for a short period of time. He calmed himself down and stopped thinking about it. It was more important to do his own things. Xianxia's gaze fell on the things he had thrown away. He walked over and skewered a wild pheasant with his long spear and carried it on his shoulder again. Suddenly he began to walk in the footsteps of a Beijing opera. He pointed his finger at the wall in front of him. His eyes were wide open as he shouted, "Look at the dark hole in front of us. It must be the thieves' lair. Wait for me to catch up and kill them all. Dong dong dong." He rushed into the wall and disappeared. It was lonely to travel alone in the dark underground. Moreover, the speed underground was not as fast as flying in the sky, so he could only find ways to relieve his boredom. A few days later, he suddenly felt that the surrounding soil was getting harder and harder, and the surrounding temperature was getting higher and higher. Feeling curious, he came out of the ground to check, and to make sure that he had not deviated from the direction he was walking. A head suddenly popped out of a vast and desolate Gobi desert. The head was full of small braids and it was looking around. This was a very wide desert and there were no obstacles in sight. The sky was high, the clouds were clear, and the sun was bright and clear. Xianxia directly jumped out of the ground and breathed in the fresh air. He had been so bored underground for the past few days. This place was spacious enough. Although it was easy to be discovered by others, it was also easy for him to discover others, which was good for escaping. Now he felt sick at the thought of going underground. The excitement he had when he had mastered the Earth formula had already faded away in the past few days. Anyone who went underground and had to see rats and earthworms running around in fear would not be able to feel happy. He carried the long spear and swayed for a while, but he did not find any signs of anyone flying in the sky. The surroundings were also desolate. Other than the grayish-brown gravel, there was no sign of life, not even a blade of grass. Such signs might have something to do with the high temperature here, which was abnormal. But it was also to his liking. It was better if there was no one. He put away the spear and flew freely in the vast Gobi desert. He did not encounter any obstacles along the way, but the temperature was getting higher and higher. It was so high that it was scary. If he did not cultivate the fire formula, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it for long, no matter how high his cultivation was. As far as Chu Tian's eyes could see, a hazy gray shadow suddenly appeared on the Gobi desert. When he got closer, he discovered that it was a continuous range of mountains. Once he flew above the mountains, he suddenly felt that he could not bear it and landed on a bare mountain top. The mountains in front of him were all bare. Animals and plants could not possibly survive under such high temperature. Xianxia looked around and his face showed some surprise. He really could not understand. Logically speaking, he cultivated the fire formula, so he should not be afraid of high temperature. But he actually faintly felt that he could not bear it. He looked in front of him. Judging from the feelings he had felt along the way, the temperature there should be even higher. He did not dare to go forward, afraid that he, a person who cultivated the fire formula, would be roasted. In the midst of his fear and hesitation, a pleasantly surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. He quickly looked around as if he was looking for something. Think about it, not to mention the temperature of ordinary fire, he was not even afraid of the tyrannical high temperature of the blue fire. Then what kind of high temperature in this world could deter him? Without a doubt, other than the legendary purple fire that ranked first in the true Samadhi fire, he really could not think of anything else that could have a higher temperature. Chapter 795. Thinking of this, his excitement overcame his fear of the high temperature. He gritted his teeth and continued to fly forward. He firmly believed that the place with the highest temperature was the place where the purple flames were most likely to appear, so he was looking for trouble. However, after flying for several kilometers, he felt that he could no longer fly. The temperature in front of him was simply too high, so high that it was frightening. He used the fire art to resist the high temperature, but he was still tormented by the high temperature. He fell from the sky in a sickly state, panting heavily as he looked around, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This godforsaken place was even more fiery than the flaming mountain in Journey to the West. It was probably comparable to Taishang Laojuan's 8 trigrams furnace. He did not know how that furry monkey managed to survive. It seemed like the legendary Samadhi true fire was used to refine Sun Wukong. Damn it! All hail Sun Wukong! Xianxia stood at the top of the mountain and took a deep breath. He immediately realized that the air around him was filled with the smell of sparks. He uprooted a large tree from Utopia and casually waved it out. As soon as it left the protection of his fire art, it immediately ignited with a buzz. The fire instantly became ferocious, and the tree that was filled with water instantly turned into ashes and scattered, leaving him speechless. Without a doubt, this was the easternmost land that Ji Wu had mentioned. No wonder she said that no one could go deep. Even he who cultivated the fire art could not endure it. No matter how high the cultivation of others was, it would probably be difficult. The sun was blazing in the sky and the ground was thousands of times hotter than the sun. Xianxia felt like he was a bun in a steamer that was about to be cooked. However, looking around, the mountains rose and fell and the world was vast. He could not see a single trace of the purple flames. He really could not stay any longer. If he did, he would definitely die, let alone go deeper. Xianxia immediately took out a small silver ball and prepared to leave. However, as soon as he threw the small silver ball, it turned into a pool of mercury before it even hit the ground. He was stunned for a moment but immediately realized that the temperature was too high. Left with no choice, he found the small porcelain bottle that he had prepared in the past and gently placed it on the ground. As soon as it left his hand, the small porcelain bottle immediately turned into a grayish-brown color. Cracks appeared on its surface and it shattered into several pieces. The corner of Xianxia's mouth twitched. He took out a large lump of nether iron and tried again. However, the moment he let it go, the nether iron instantly emitted black smoke and turned into black water, dyeing the ground black. Your grandfather, you can't expect me to retreat outside and come back in again, right? Xianxia cursed as he pointed at his surroundings. In the end, Bai Changchun decided to go all out. He took out a storage bracelet and took out treasures one by one and threw them out. These were the treasures Bai Changchun had obtained when he killed Jin Miao and the others in the cannibal tribe. He wanted to see what kind of treasures could withstand such high temperatures. The result left him dumbfounded. All the treasures he had thrown out had turned into liquid metal. Xianxia was completely speechless. These were all treasures from the immortal world. The power of these purple flames was simply too terrifying. He had not even seen the purple flames yet, but the heat they emitted was already so terrifying. Speechless, he gritted his teeth and took out Jin Miao's defensive treasure, the golden umbrella. Once the golden umbrella was taken out, it immediately shone with golden light. What made him overjoyed was that it was indeed a treasure personally bestowed by the immortal emperor. It could actually withstand such terrifying heat. Damn, it really is a good treasure. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding in the golden light under the umbrella, was extremely cocky. Under the protection of the golden umbrella, the temperature inside and outside were worlds apart. Without a word, he immediately flew up with a big umbrella that shone with golden light. He hid under the umbrella and looked around contentedly, hoping to find traces of the purple flames. He was dressed almost completely naked, but he was flying with an umbrella. The way he was dressed was extraordinarily avant-garde. However, not long after, he realized that something was wrong. It seemed like the protective golden light emitted by the golden umbrella was a little chaotic and was shining dimly. Yu Qianqiu also felt the heat coming from the handle of the umbrella. Not good. This golden umbrella was powerful, but it could only last for a limited time. If he persisted any longer, this good treasure would be destroyed. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly landed and looked around anxiously. He had to find a way to leave a teleportation coordinate, or he would have to repeat the journey here indefinitely. After hesitating for a while, the golden umbrella had already begun to turn red, like a red-hot soldering iron. In his panic, Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly lit up. He remembered the scene when Immortal Crocodile had used the divine sword to kill Jin Miao. The power of the divine sword could not even be blocked by the golden umbrella, so it was naturally more powerful than the golden umbrella. Moreover, the divine sword had absorbed his blood essence, so it was a good item to use as a teleportation coordinate. At this thought, he saw that the golden umbrella was about to collapse. He did not dare to hesitate anymore. The divine sword flashed quickly and stabbed into the ground with a swoosh. Yu Qianqiu directly carried the umbrella and disappeared on the spot. Lady Mu was meditating under a tall magnolia tree on Obedient Island in the demonic ghost domain when she suddenly heard the sound of something falling into the water, followed by a strange splash. When she opened her eyes, she immediately saw intense white smoke rising from the lake beside Obedient Island. It was a vast expanse of whiteness. Lady Mu teleported over with an angry look on her face. She was just about to rebuke the newcomer when she heard Yu Qianqiu's comfortable moans coming from the boundless white mist. She couldn't help but be startled. When the white fog rose and disappeared, she saw a shirtless Yu Qianqiu playing around in the lake with a golden umbrella. After the temperature had completely cooled down, Yu Qianqiu quickly flashed to Obedient Island and took out the golden umbrella again. The golden light from the umbrella's rim once again wrapped him up. Seeing that the treasure was not damaged, Yu Qianqiu finally heaved a sigh of relief and put away the golden umbrella. When he saw Miss Mu, who was looking at him with a surprised expression, he turned his hand and summoned a water dragon from the 1,000-mile lake. The meandering water shot over and instantly froze into a large block of ice that was several meters wide. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and send some fresh fruits over. I almost died from the heat." After saying that, he directly flashed into the big house and lay down on the mat on the ground, enjoying the cool shade. He still had a lingering fear of the terrifyingly high temperature in that damned place. After some time, Lady Mu smilingly came in with a plate of all kinds of fresh fruits. The plate was even sprinkled with crushed ice to cool it down. The fragrance of the cold fruits was refreshing. Yu Qianqiu got up and grabbed the fruits on the plate and chewed on them. He even swallowed a few pieces of ice. A chill rose from his stomach and he finally got rid of his fear of the high temperature. Just as he burped, he suddenly thought of the godly sword. He wondered if he could still withstand the heat after such a long time. Could it be like the golden umbrella, which could only withstand the heat for a while? Thinking of this, he suddenly became nervous. That was a good treasure. Please don't destroy it. He immediately disappeared from the big house. When he reappeared in that desolate and uninhabited place, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and the godly sword sprang up from the ground and landed in his hand. He touched it everywhere and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The godly sword was indeed a godly sword. It was actually immune to high temperature. Even after such a long time, it was still as cold as an unsheathed sword. He finally heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed. Looking around, he enlarged the godly sword in his hand and held it in his arms to cool himself down. He then flew into the sky again and continued to search for traces of the purple flames in this barren land. When the high temperature was too much for him to bear, he once again took out the golden umbrella to resist for a period of time. When the golden umbrella could no longer withstand it, he immediately stabbed the godly sword into the ground and returned to Obedient Island with the golden umbrella to cool himself down again. After going back and forth like this for a long time, It was finally nighttime. As soon as night fell, Yu Qianzhou immediately became spirited. He thought that as long as the purple flames appeared, they would definitely shine. Night was the best time to find the purple flames. Under the starry sky, Yu Qianzhou, who had been tossing and turning in this barren land until the middle of the night, was not discouraged. It seemed that he would not give up until he found the purple flames. Under the repeated torture of the high temperature, his mental state was quite dispirited. However, he still forced himself to persevere in his search. This persisted for a few days. Whether it was the consumption of his mental state or the consumption of his true essence, it was extremely huge. At times like this fellow's commendable fighting spirit would come out and he would forcefully stuff a large amount of elixirs into his stomach to persevere. He firmly believed that as long as he put in the effort he would be rewarded. Lady Mu did not know what he was doing, but she found that every time he came back his condition would worsen. When she saw him eating elixirs as if they were his meals, she could not help but be secretly worried. Another 10 or so days passed. Yu Qianzhou, who had searched this barren land for thousands of miles, began to feel disappointed. Could it be that the purple flames could only be seen by those who were fated? And that he was not fated to see the purple flames? Or was it that the method he was searching for had gone astray? Or was there no purple flames here at all? After some reflection, he firmly believed that the abnormality of this place proved that there were purple flames here. As for whether it was fated or not, it could not compare to the word diligence. Diligence represented success and diligence represented fate. The only thing he needed to reflect on now was that the method he was searching for was definitely wrong, and he had gone astray. Under the bright starry sky, the terrifyingly high temperature did not decrease in the slightest. Yu Qianzhou looked around and frowned as he pondered. Purple flames, what kind of form did they take? Several people, including that rotten crow, had told him that the purple flames were the source of power that supported the operation of this world. They were infinitely powerful, and it was difficult for those who were not fated to see them. Could it be that the purple flames were originally scattered, and would only be seen when they were relatively concentrated? This thought flashed through his mind and immediately caused his body to tremble. He suddenly turned around and looked around this barren land that spanned thousands of miles. The light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter.